Chapter 256. A full 5,000 feet of space. Whether it was someone strong like Xuanwu Realm or someone weak like an ant, they were all locked down. It wasn't that space was frozen, but that a huge pressure was placed on their bodies. Zhongshou himself wasn't familiar with these few moves of the King Path secret technique. Using the sword to replace the fist was even more unfamiliar. The sword attack went totally berserk. Not only those Xuanwu ancestors and returned to Sun Spirit Masters who tried to escape. Even the people on his side were suppressed by this heavy sword attack. Out of everyone present, only Hu Qianqiu and the 20-odd martial path experts who had reached 7 meridians and above could still move. However, they all felt that their hands and feet were restricted, like they were in a quagmire, their movements restricted. Wei Jinren and Li Hujichang, who were in midair, were pretty much frozen in midair. Although Zhongshou couldn't control this sword, a small portion of the pressure was placed on the two of them. It caused them to go all out but still be unable to recover their lightning-quick movement speed. There were many illusions in front of their eyes, like their bodies were suppressing mountains and oceans, the pressure multiplying. Wei Jinren's eyes turned red. How could he die here? He was the 3rd-generation direct disciple of Daoming sect. In the future, he had the ability to reach the 8th-grade body-forming realm. His future was limitless. How could he die in Gantian Mountain City, in the hands of a kid? He had to return to the sect and ask for orders from the sect. If he couldn't recruit this Zhongshou, then he had to think of a way to swiftly kill him. In his entire life, he had never seen such a talented junior. If he was allowed to grow, it would be a calamity for the future Daoming sect. In just 10 years, this Zhongshou would surpass Zhong Weiran, an unprecedented enemy of the sect. The willow leaf flying sword behind him instantly exploded and shot out in all directions, forming heavy sword images. Like a tornado, it sliced the space around him. The sword energy shot out in all directions, the wind danced, causing his body to finally start to speed up. A joyous expression appeared on Wuye's face. She felt that she was about to escape and ascend to the heavens. Only to hear Zhongshou mutter once more. 1,000 years of hegemony, 100 victories. A dragon-like sword light suddenly shot up. It was as if all the mountains and rivers had merged into Zhongshou's sword. The vast sword light continued to soar for thousands of feet. He slashed towards the sky. Taoist Master Wu Ye's face instantly twisted. He roared madly and furiously as he hurriedly circulated almost all of his soul power. It caused the 48 swords to instantly merge into one and slash down. It clashed with the sword glow, only to hear a loud explosion. The 48 willow leaf swords instantly shattered. They were all sent flying. Among them, the swords that bore the brunt of the attack disintegrated into pieces of metal. The sword chi didn't slow down at all as it continued to charge forward. Then, with another muffled bang, the red mist exploded and dispersed. Wei Jinren's entire body was completely shattered by the sword chi without any resistance. It was not sharp, but it was as powerful as a mountain. This was why it was shattered and not slashed apart. Blood rained down, dripping onto the altar bit by bit. Even Zhongshou's face was stained with a few drops. He grinned, finally dealing with one. He felt much more relaxed. He was already sweating profusely and was having a tough time. However, he still turned his eyes towards Li Hujichang. Stepping in the air, although his speed couldn't compare to those true ascended ancestors. However, his flying speed was extremely fast. It wasn't any slower than Wuye, who could drive artifacts to fly. Even after he had used the mountain river freezing technique, he still hadn't recovered from the shock. He was still 3,000 feet away, close to a mile away. His eyes flashed. The 9 Qilin sword in Zhongshou's hand shook once more, producing many illusions. Those fist techniques had a total of 4 moves. This was the 3rd fist. It was also the 3rd sword. Why don't we get drunk? Once again, the sword rose up and stabbed out. It was like millions of illusions, thousands of layers of sword veils. Zhong Shou's body was like he was drunk, stumbling on the altar and on the verge of falling. Li Hu Jichang gritted his teeth, taking out a talisman and throwing it behind him. Instantly it formed a shield shape, gathering the energy of heaven and earth. It was silver-white and extremely thick. It spread out hundreds of feet and protected Li Hu Jichang. On the altar below, Zhong Ling's brows furrowed in shock. It's actually a spirit cloud shield talisman. Thinking to himself, no wonder Jichang would say that he could block Hu Qianqiu and the others for 200 breath. It was a grade 8 talisman written by a body-shaping spirit master. Zhong Shou didn't even take a look. His mind was immersed in the sword move. The thousands of sword lights he stabbed out weren't just illusions. The person who created this set of fist techniques was truly a peerless genius. Using his drunken body to use energy and true energy to draw the power of heaven and earth, the strength of the country. The speed of the sword was several times faster than before. He didn't care whether or not he could break the shield or whether or not he could kill Jichang. He only knew that he had to try his best. Even if he couldn't break it, he wouldn't feel regret. His divine soul had entered a state of great joy. Although this fist technique was incomplete, the concept behind it was something that even in the future where numerous martial path secret techniques were spread through various channels, Zhong Shou had never seen a similar martial art. 1 sword, 2 swords, 4 swords, 7 swords, 9 swords. 2 breaths later, the 9th sword stabbed out and that silver-white spiritual shield was totally smashed. Then, another sword pierced through, like a swan sweeping through the wilderness, like a white chain, charging over once more. Jichang went all out and finally broke free from the restrictions of Zhong Shou's sword. However, when the shield broke and the 10th sword light slashed over, he was astonished. Without hesitation, he hollered furiously, pulling back his halberd and crazily slashing down. When the halberd and sword light clashed with one another, in this 10,000 feet of cloud, there was a metal clang. Numerous clouds were pushed aside by that maniacal energy. Jichang coughed out blood, half of his arms were paralyzed and he couldn't muster up any strength. In the next instance, the 11th sword struck over once more. The true qi in Jichang's body was nearly dried up, but at this moment, all his life potential was ignited. He roared out once more, his body flashing as he flew into the distance, not knowing how to change his trajectory. However, in just a moment, Jichang's face was filled with despair. Only to see that sword was also indiscernible, recovering the 1,000 sword lights from before and crazily covering over. All of a sudden, he couldn't avoid it. His body was just a moment slower before he felt a vast power smashing into his body. Pung! Another explosion, blood and flesh splattering all about. Along with the wind, it scattered downwards. The remaining Xuanwu ancestors and returned to Sun Spirit Masters were all wiped out by Hu Qianqiu and the others in these tens of breaths. The entire altar returned to deathly silence. Xuemoyan was dead. Wei Jinren was dead. Li Hu Jichang was dead. Below the ascended realm, the 3 top experts of the human world, people who could cause the mortal world west of Donglin Cloud Continent to shake with a stomp of their feet, actually fell one after another. However, the person that everyone had expected to be the least likely to survive was standing on the stage unscathed. His body didn't have any injuries at all. At this moment, even the most imaginative person felt like it wasn't real. The image of the teen on the platform had totally changed in everyone's eyes. Although his body was still thin and weak, the overbearingness of the sword when he slashed out could cause everyone present to tremble. His face was clean and pure, no different from a normal teen. However, the way he subdued Zhong Yuan, the lightning-fast methods yesterday, even that bloody massacre all left a deep impression, unforgettable. This is what they mean by pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, too cunning. Such talent is pretty much cheating. Xuemoyan and Wuya, what a waste. Chai Yuan sighed in his heart, his eyes looking at the center of the altar 100 feet away. Squinting his eyes, he only felt that at this moment, the light that was released from Zhong Shou's body was extremely eye-piercing. In his heart, he felt fortunate that he wasn't willing to follow the Shui family and stepped out of this quagmire. Although he didn't stand on the right side, he didn't walk the wrong path. However, the Xiantian ruler really hid it well. Such a talent like the prince was actually willing to be looked down upon by others, hiding it and not showing it. Only today did he shock everyone. Looking at the person who was heavily injured and had his knee broken, Chai Yuan shifted his eyes away in disdain. Before this, he supported Zongyang because he wanted to maintain the foundations of Gantian Mountain. However, although the prince was a direct descendant, he didn't have much connection with the Zong family race leader. Instead, they had a conflict of interest. In his heart, he admitted that Zong Shi was the most talented person in this generation of the Zong family and had the most right to inherit the position of the Monster King. However, at this moment, as Hu Qianqiu said, he was just an unassuming scum. The prince was the cloud in the sky that couldn't be reached. As for this Zong Shi, no matter how dazzling he was just mud in the dust that could be stepped on by anyone. Zong Shou kept his sword, only feeling that the true qi in his body and the spiritual energy in his soul ocean were all sucked dry. The 100 battle sword should be the most overbearing sword out of the 4-sword move. Hundreds of swords, however, it was used in a group battle. With his current cultivation, he couldn't use it. This drunken sword was also extremely strong, the sword's speed was the fastest and the most unpredictable. The huge consumption far exceeded what he could take. After a long while, Zong Shou barely recovered a little. However, his face was still a perverted red. He seemed to have comprehended something, combining it with the chant of the fourth fist technique. Suddenly, he understood the emotions and mentality of the person who created this fist technique. Looking at the heart cultivation method, it was obviously expanded from the indefinite spirit emperor fist. Was the master really Zhong Weiran? This fist technique wasn't incomplete, but not completed? Thinking about it for a moment, Zong Shou was unable to confirm. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He suddenly turned his head and smiled towards the old priest Zong Ling. A proper ceremony was interrupted. Who knows if the heavens will forgive me for using Zong Shi's head as a sacrifice? Chapter 257. A proper ceremony was interrupted. Will the heavens forgive me for using Zong Shi's head? When Zong Ling heard that, he was astonished. He knew that Zong Shi wanted to use Zong Shi's head to show off his might once more. Looking at Zong Shi, whose face was devoid of color and whose eyes were filled with despair, he nodded without hesitation. This person colluded with the enemy and tried to assassinate the prince. He is the main culprit who disrupted the heaven-worshipping ceremony and has committed a huge sin. He should be killed to appease the anger of the heavens. As his voice faded, the thousands of people below the altar knelt on the ground one after another. They all knelt down, their expressions filled with passion and surprise. Many of them still hadn't recovered from the shock, only feeling that their chests were filled with emotions, unable to control themselves. Rumors couldn't be trusted. The prince wasn't trash. Not only was he not, but he was a dual cultivator, a true talent. He was the true heir of the Monster King of Gantian Mountain. In the future, he would be the true king of Gantian Mountain. Their chests were all burning up like magma was flowing in them. At this moment, they hated Zong Shi and Zong Yang to the extreme. If it wasn't for these despicable people and the remnants of the Zong family direct bloodline causing trouble, how would Gantian Mountain suffer such losses? Thinking back to the dangerous situation just now, it made them break out in cold sweat. If it wasn't for the prince being so valiant and grasping the emperor martial path, the mountain river soared intent. In the battle just now, these people might have succeeded. How would they have the face to meet the late ruler? Prince, please kill Zong Shi and punish him. to appease the anger of the heavens. The voices of thousands of people merged into one, instantly shaking the entire mountain peak. Out of all the people present, only those 10 over Zong family elders didn't kneel down. Standing beneath the stone altar, they seemed really out of place. However, at this moment, their eyes were filled with worry and helplessness. Zong Shou laughed, the 9 Qilin sword in his hand slashing down. The moment a blade shadow slashed out, a scoff spread out from afar. Stop! Even if Zong Shi was in the wrong, he should be punished according to the clan rules. Isn't the crown prince the clan leader or the demon king? Don't you think you're overstepping your authority by executing him without trial? Thin blue threads appeared in the air, wrapping around him from afar. It was like water yet not water, like gold yet not gold, somewhere in between. When he got close, there was an invisible force that obstructed his sword. When Zong Shi heard that, his eyes were filled with joy. The despair that he had felt earlier also gradually faded away. Meanwhile, the Zong Consortium's elders were also looking forward to it. With Uncle Zong here, even if he couldn't cripple Zong Shou, he would definitely be able to suppress his arrogance. Let these people know that the direct bloodline of the Zong clan was not to be trifled with. It definitely wasn't because Zong Weiran showed mercy. Zong Shou raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the voice. In the distance, a person was flying over on a weapon. His feet stepped on a bamboo scroll. His body was tall and slender. He looked around 40 years old, but his eyes were filled with vicissitude. Who knows how old he was? In his hand was a blue ball that looked like it was formed from numerous threads. It was the source of those blue threads. What was surprising was that when he used his luck in his eyes, he only felt that this person's soul was huge and bright. It was like there were 10 talismans floating in his soul ocean. 10 true talismans? After a return to Sun Realm, Spirit Master had 9 true talismans. That was the peak. However, as long as one's soul ocean could take it in, the true talismans could be formed. It could quickly accumulate strength to break through to the day wandering realm. Thinking that this person should be Uncle Zong of the Zong Consortium, the peak of the return to Sun Realm. No wonder after Zong Weiran disappeared. The Sky Fox Zong family was still the top family in Gantian Mountain City. Not only did they have a large population, but they were also the top of the Gantian mountain races. A cold intent flashed across his eyes. Pretty much without even thinking, he slashed out with his sword. In his mind, a heart chant flashed across as he chanted out. Because of love and endless hatred. The snow-bright sword glow was like a sudden appearance. In a flash, he was thousands of feet away. The sword attack was sudden to the extreme and quick to the extreme. Although the splendor of the darkness blooming Sirius had dissipated a little. However, this unlimited sword instantly gathered all of Zong Shou's strength, all of his spiritual energy into one spot. Like threads of love, thousands of miles of yearning couldn't cut them off. Hatred filled the heavens, endless and endless. All of his thoughts were gathered in one sword. It caused this sword attack to be as thin as a thread, but also endless. Only to hear a light crackling sound as the few threads in the air were instantly sliced apart. That sharp entangling sword thread didn't stop as it pierced right for the middle-aged man's throat. The Sky Fox Zong uncle was furious. He didn't expect that Zong Shou would dare to use martial arts against him. Then, his eyes turned cold. Casting out several spells, a spiritual shield formed from the 5 elements formed in front of him. There were a total of 9 layers, stacked in front of him. However, these shields weren't fully formed yet. Only to see the sword shadow suddenly stab in from the most unexpected position. Pa! A 5-element spiritual shield instantly dissipated and broke apart. It actually slashed at the node where spiritual energy gathered, messing up the original arrangement of spiritual energy. It was shattered without much effort. Behind it, it was like a hot knife through butter. A few layers of 5-element spiritual shields were the same, unable to block the sword thread for even a moment. The eyes of the white-shirt middle-aged man constricted. He waved his sleeves and a thick thread of soul smoke was spat out. In midair, it turned into a giant eagle with a wingspan of 700 feet. When it spread out its wings, it instantly absorbed spiritual energy and spread out. Everyone present who was below the martial ancestor realm had cold sweat all over their bodies. Their faces were all covered in cold sweat. A huge pressure was pressing down on their minds. The moment it showed its body, the giant eagle gave out a crisp cry, using its giant steel pincer-like claws to grab downward. Zhong Shu laughed out loud, flipping the 9 Qilin sword in his hand. Then, the sword energy changed its trajectory. It avoided the sharp claws and slashed across the chest of the giant eagle. With a chi sound, this grade 6 peak spirit beast was instantly sliced into half. When the white-shirt middle-aged man saw that, he didn't care at all. Although the combat strength of the spirit beast dropped compared to when it was alive. However, as long as the soul stone wasn't destroyed and the spirit master had enough spiritual energy to repair it, it would continue to regenerate. However, in the next instance, his pupils constricted, instantly turning into a needle shape. For some reason, that sword energy actually gave out a whirlpool power. It instantly absorbed a large portion of the soul smoke that the giant eagle spread out before exploding out. The soul stone in the white-shirt middle-aged man's sleeves also exploded at the same time. His soul was also hit by the backlash without any preparation. It caused his mind to feel intensely dizzy. That thin sword thread was already in front of his eyes. At this moment, he was pretty much unable to use any spells, only using all his strength to drive the bamboo slip-shaped spiritual artifact under his feet to fly crazily. Only when he was thousands of feet out did he stop, only to see his neck turn cold. Using his hand to touch it, his hand was actually covered in fresh blood. Who knows when this wound was caused by that sword energy? It was inches into his flesh, just a few millimeters away from his throat and spine. The eyes of the white-shirt middle-aged man instantly popped out, filled with disbelief. He was actually injured. A return to Sun Peak expert actually couldn't beat a 14-year-old kid. What a huge humiliation! Those 10 over Zhong family race elders were all in a daze once more, unable to speak. Even Uncle Zhong, the one they relied on as a great wall. Did he lose? Hey! Today is the day I ascend to the throne. My mood is not bad. I don't want to kill anymore. Seeing that you are also our race uncle and didn't do anything wrong, I will let you live. Zhong Shu laughed coldly. It wasn't that he didn't want to kill him, but that he couldn't. Little Gold dropped the ball. His spiritual energy was about to be used up. At the last moment, he had no choice but to stop. However, bragging wasn't against the law, and no one would retort at this moment. Even this Uncle Zhong himself wouldn't be able to notice. As for this Zhong Shu, I said that he will die today, so I won't let him live for a moment longer. You are just a small Uncle Zhong, stop being so noisy in front of me. Another sword light waved and slashed down once more, directly slicing off Zhong Shu's head. This person's blood had already flowed out, but that severed head rolled on the ground, his eyes still wide open, unable to close. Zhong Shu's mind was slightly distracted. 10,000 miles of mountains and rivers settled in 10 years, conquering 1,000 years and winning 100 battles. Why not drink a cup and get drunk because of endless emotions and hatred? In the last life, he focused on martial arts and had nothing to do with poetry. He didn't know whether or not these few sentences were well matched, whether or not they rhymed. However, he knew that the meaning of these few sentences was similar to Zhong Weiron's heart. All of a sudden, a series of thoughts appeared in his mind. Was this created by Zhong Weiron? Why was the first martial arts manual he saw in the last life such a broken fist technique? In his chest there was some fear of the truth behind all this. Until Zhong Ling coughed to remind him did he come back to his senses, bowing to the heavens once more. He just needed to complete this last step and the entire ceremony would be considered complete. In the next moment, he heard a scoff, "Slow down." Zhong Shou couldn't help but roll his eyes, thinking to himself, "Again?" He had no choice but to turn around, only to see that the white-shirt middle-aged man's expression had recovered. "I heard that Zhong Ming and Zhong Hao died in your hands?" Zhong Shou kept silent and didn't reply. Although Zhong Hao was killed by Zhong Yuan, he died indirectly. There were also close to 1,000 of my Zhong family Sky Fox disciples who were killed by you? Zhong Shou didn't deny it. The white-shirt Uncle Zhong stared furiously, his tone sharp. "That Zhong Ming and Zhong Hao only recommended Monster King candidates before you returned. What crime did those 1,000 disciples commit? Should they be executed? What evidence do you have to say that they rebelled? Such a cruel and merciless person, how is he fit to be the race leader of our Sky Fox race?" On the altar, it was silent once more, filled with a dark and suppressive aura. Since Uncle Zhong said that, it does make sense. Zhong Shou was delighted when he heard that, his eyes filled with curiosity. "But today I am inheriting the position of Gantian Mountain Monster King. What does that have to do with the race leader of the Zhong family? I really don't understand. Why should I, Zhong Shou, be the race leader of the Sky Fox race?" Chapter 258. The moment he said that, the white-shirt middle-aged man was totally startled. Even the old priest Zhong Ling behind Zhong Shou opened his mouth in shock. "I am inheriting the Gantian Mountain Monster King position, so why should I, Zhong Shou, be the Sky Fox race leader?" Thinking about it, it made one feel a chill down one's spine. Since the start, in everyone's hearts, the Gantian Mountain City Lord was naturally connected to the Sky Fox Zhong family race leader. 1 as 2, 2 as 1. However, listening to what Zhong Shou said, it seemed like he wanted to separate the two. Thinking about it carefully, it made sense. Zhong Weiran started from nothing. The hundreds of thousands of direct descendants and trusted troops outside of the city had nothing to do with the Sky Fox Zhong family. The Zhong family race leader position was snatched by Zhong Weiran a few years after he built up Gantian Mountain City. Now that his son had died, he took over as the city lord. Don't be the race leader. What right did your Zhong family direct bloodline have to force it? Don't you want it? Following which he understood another layer. Zhong Shou's actions were vicious. In terms of righteousness, he totally cut off the connection between the two. In the future, only Zhong Weiran and Zhong Shou's blood descendants could inherit the city lord position. And those who could become the Sky Fox race leader might not be able to become the Gantian Mountain Monster King. However, since he had a city and a country army in his hands, within the Zhong family, who would be able to take the race leader position? Who would be able to fight with Zhong Shou? There would be no connection with the Zhong family direct bloodline disciples. Not only did he viciously fight back, but he also solved all future problems. On the other side, Zhong Gang blinked. The more he thought about the prince's words, the more he thought about it. He also acted like he was confused. That's right, our prince is only inheriting the city lord position. What Sky Fox race leader, who cares about that? Uncle Zhong, what can you do about it? Hu Qianqiu, Qiu Wei, and the others all smiled, their expressions relaxed. Chai Yuan's gaze was even filled with respect. Using 4 tails to overcome 1,000 caddies, the matter of status was easily settled. His son's methods were indeed surprising and pleasantly surprising. The white-clothed middle-aged man had obviously comprehended the profoundness within it as well. His body trembled like chaff, and his face was ashen and gloomy. A moment later, he laughed instead of getting angry. Good, good, good. What a good Zhong Weiran, he really gave birth to a good son. Since the Crown Prince doesn't care about the 800,000 people of the Heavenly Fox clan. If anything happens to the heir in the future, don't blame our Zhong clan for not doing anything. As long as I, Zhongsho, am still alive, you, Zhongsho, can forget about inheriting the position of patriarch. Building another race, I like it. Anyways, it is boring staying in the Skyfox Zone clan. Why should we, the branch families, be suppressed by them? Gantian Zone clan, what a good name. Count me in. As for the Black Fox Iron Cavalry, the prince doesn't need to worry, we have had enough of their attitude. Zhong Ling's eyes flashed as he looked up at the heavens, following which his old face was filled with emotions. I remember decades ago, I always found these direct bloodline people annoying. Why did they have to suppress us just because they reincarnated a little better, to be so arrogant? Why can't we side bloodlines cultivate in the spells and secret techniques left by the ancestors? Even today, my anger has been smoothed out, but I am still annoyed. Since the prince has the ambition to create your own race, then I have to help. He also waved his sleeves and half knelt down. Under me, my family of 46 people. I am willing to enter the Gantian Zong family tree. After the three of them, below the altar, it was like a domino had been pushed down. Pretty much all the Zong family side bloodlines all bowed down. Their voices rose up one after another, rising and falling. There were generals at the highest level, commanders at the highest level, and mid-level generals at the lowest level, lieutenant generals and lieutenant. Close to 1,000 people, pretty much without exception, their faces flushed red with excitement. Not only the side bloodline disciples, even some of the Zong family direct bloodline disciples had a weird glow in their eyes, their expressions extremely calm as they knelt down. Hu Qianqiu's mouth was agape as he looked at this scene. He also saw that Zhong Zheng's face was totally twisted. He couldn't help but burst out laughing, not hesitating to hit him when he was down, to rub salt on his wounds and stab a knife into his heart. The voice exclaimed in admiration, "Not a single one of them is willing to stay. The Crown Prince's move of removing the firewood from under the cauldron is truly ingenious. Old Chai, after today. Out of the 800,000 Sky Fox Zone family people, how many will be left?" Chai Yuan couldn't help but turn around and stare at him. He knew that this Hu Qianqiu was an unforgiving person. However, he really didn't have anything to worry about against that Zhong Zheng. Zhong Shou's actions were indeed taking away the firewood from the bottom of the cauldron. Without his tribesmen, without his wings, even if he was a return to Sun Realm spirit master cultivation, he was still a tiger without its teeth, an eagle without its feathers. He smiled and continued the conversation. Who knows? There are at least 30,000 Sky Fox direct bloodline disciples. However, who knows, he might be the only one left. Sigh, the Donglin race, the Fox race King race will wither just like that. Hu Qianqiu instantly laughed out loud, viciously patting Chai Yuan's shoulder. His words were really what he wanted. His judgment of the situation was the same as his. Zhong Zheng was close to losing his soul, looking at the scenes in front of him at a loss. A series of impacts caused him to lose control of his mind. He wasn't as domineering as before. After a long while, his face turned vicious as he stepped forwards, incoherent, shaking his head like a maniac. "You can't do that! You are going to destroy my Sky Fox Zone family. Who gave you the right to establish another race? I won't admit it." Before he finished, Zhong Gang, Hu Qianqiu, Chai Yuan, and the others warily pressed their weapons, their eyes filled with killing intent. Before this, it was Zhong Shou's race matters which they couldn't interfere in. However, now that Zhong Shou had established another race, then naturally they could treat him as an enemy. Why do I need you to admit it? Just because I am the monster king of Gantian Mountain, the head of the fox race. Zhong Shou's face faced the rising sun as he shook his head. At this moment, he calmed down, his impulsiveness retreating. Although he felt a little weird, since he had already done it, there was nothing to regret. Following which he walked forwards confidently towards the sky altar. I remember before Zhong Shi died, He said that in this chaotic world, the strong are respected, the fist is the biggest. Although it makes one annoyed, it makes sense. You said that I killed Zhong Ming and Zhong Hao for no reason. Killing those 1,000 over direct bloodline disciples is cruel and bloodthirsty, violent and heartless. I am too lazy to retort you. Today I will only say one sentence. I, Zhong Shou, am cruel and heartless. What can you do about it? I killed those 1,000 people when I wanted to. Why would I need a reason? When he said that, Zhong Shou's body suddenly stopped, standing beside Zhong He, laughing softly. Just a dual meridian trash. You actually dare to rely on your father's strength to be so arrogant. As expected, you can only be happy for a while. What a pity for my Skyfox race, those 1,000 elite disciples, they really didn't die worth it. It is good that this bastard died, it is really good that he died. Were you the one who said those words just now? Zhong He's eyes constricted, his lips opening and closing like he wanted to explain. Zhong Shou was too lazy to listen, directly slashing out with a sword. The sword light flashed, only to see Zhong He's head toss high into the air. The blood was like a fountain, spurting tens of feet high. When the sky was filled with droplets of blood, the 10 Zhong clan elders did not even dare to dodge and allowed the blood to splash on their bodies. They only felt their hearts turn cold. Zhong Shou's undisguised killing intent directly invaded their hearts, chilling them to the bone. Look, in this Gantian mountain city, my fist is the biggest. What I say is the reason, the law, the will of the heavens. I don't know how father treated all of you in the past. However, I, Zhong Shou, am not father. So all of you, don't be so shameless. He stepped forwards once more, and this time Zhong Shou stood in front of Zhong Rui. Chapter 259. As he said that, Zhong Shou once again took a few steps forwards. This time he stood in front of Zhong Rui. I will make that Hu Qianqiu pay the price for this. After this, I will whip that Zhong Shou's corpse in front of everyone and hang his head for a few months to vent my anger. Oh right, there's also this sentence. However, it's best to ask Uncle Zhong to rush over quickly. Sure is alone and weak. Even if I kill this Zhong Shou, I won't be able to control the situation. It seems like I need Uncle Zhong to act to suppress these people. Although it was a chaotic battle, Zhong Shou still paid attention to the surroundings and listened to everything around him. Thinking back carefully, he spat out word by word. Pretty much word for word, the smile on his face was pretty much cruel. Speaking of which, you are on the same side as that Zhong Shi. Now that Uncle Zhong has been invited by you, what can he do to me, Zhong Shou? Zhong Rui's body shuddered, his eyes filled with fear. He could pretty much foresee his fate. At this moment, it wasn't that he didn't think about escaping. However, at this moment, the gazes of thousands of people were focused on him, their eyes filled with killing intent. As for those who were stronger than him or on par with him, there were even more who knew how many. If he wanted to escape, where could he escape to in this Gantian mountain city? How could he possibly escape? At this moment, he even gave up all thoughts of resisting, only hoping that this prince wouldn't harm his family after this matter. Zhong Zheng's face was a mix of green and red. His eyes were filled with rage and helplessness. The fighting intent that Hu Qianqiu and the others gave off made him feel worried. After a long while, that voice seemed to be spat out from the depths of the abyss. He said word by word, Zhong Shou, you dare? I dare. What can you do to me? Zhong Shou opened his mouth and smiled, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. The 9 Qilin sword in his hand slashed diagonally, slicing off Zhong Rui's neck with a kacha sound. The elders of the Sky Fox clan, who numbered less than 10, were all speechless. Before today, who would have thought that this seemingly useless crown prince was a night-roaming realm cultivator, Xiantian initial meridian, and had already comprehended the sword will and the monarch martial arts. He was a genius of the highest talent in the Cloud Continent. He had never expected Zhong Shou to be so ruthless, violent, and fierce when he was angry. The two patriarchs of the Heavenly Fox clan killed without hesitation. They did not even blink. They were almost crazy. His chest and lungs had been corroded by a thick sense of regret. The Crown Prince and the previous Emperor were indeed different. Even if there were any problems, he would still reason with them. As for Zhongshou, his fists were the biggest. If you were not convinced, then he would beat you into submission. Only now did he feel nostalgic and realize how precious the time when the late ruler was still alive was. Zhongshou then walked in front of another person. Although this person didn't speak, not long ago he was on the steps, blocking others from rushing over to help. Beside his ear, he could hear Zhongzheng's furious roar. Zhongshou smiled in disdain. This time he didn't even ask, slashing out with his sword. When blood spurted out, another head flew into the air. Zhongshou suddenly turned around, holding the 9 Qilin sword as he pointed at Zhongzheng. "Old man, you don't dare to fight? I have killed enough of these people, and am too lazy to dirty my hand. Your Sky Fox Zhong family is going to be more stubborn and leave my Gantian mountain city, or be loyal to me and be my dogs, being ordered by me. Whether you live or die, fight or surrender, you can choose your own path. Today you can decide with a single word." Gantian Mountain Peak was totally silent, like they were all waiting for Zhongzheng to reply. As for Zhongzheng himself, it was like he was dead. There was no sound at all. Zhonggang directly laughed coldly. It wouldn't be so easy to leave Gantian Mountain. Not to mention, there were many people who were unhappy with the Zhong family direct bloodline and even hated them. Even he wouldn't allow them to leave. In his heart, he was already thinking about which old subordinates he could borrow the strength of. If Crown Prince Ran was merciful, then he would be the butcher. He would wipe out the entire family, pulling out the roots and not leaving any future problems. For this matter, Hu Zhongyuan, Qiu Wei and the others, due to their identities, couldn't do it. Only he who was born in the Zhong family could do it. However, just as he thought about that, the few remaining Sky Fox race elders behind Zhongshou exchanged glances with one another before kneeling down and kowtowing to Zhongshou. "The prince is wise. My Sky Fox race Zhong Bo has always supported Zhongshi and Zhongyang, causing us to be tempted by them. Please forgive us. From today onwards, we aren't willing to be threatened by them. We are willing to join the Gantian Mountain Zhong family and treat the prince as our race head." Zhongzheng's expression was originally really calm. However, his soul power continued to surge. His aura was like a volcano that was about to explode, extremely dangerous. When he heard those words, his entire body froze up. In an instant, he was totally disheartened, losing all his energy. The will to fight to the death that rose up disappeared without a trace. He let out a long sigh, his face appearing exceptionally sorrowful and aged. Zhongshou was also startled. He originally thought that he couldn't avoid a battle with Zhongzheng today. He would have to pay a huge price to kill him. However, he didn't expect these so-called Sky Fox race elders to be so soft. After being slashed a few times and threatened a few times, they gave in just like that. It was with much difficulty that he could act cool, and he didn't need to hide his ability anymore. Why did he have to do such a thing at such a time? At this moment, below the altar, the thousands of Gantian Mountain officials were all stunned. Although they didn't understand why the arrogant laughter of the new city lord suddenly disappeared, they were all deep in thought. Maybe some people couldn't sense it, but all the people in high positions understood. The change in Gantian Mountain today would affect the entire Donglin Cloud continent. The ripples of the aftershocks would probably not subside even after several months. The prince's talent would shock the cloud world and threaten all the enemies. However, who knows, there might be even bigger waves gathering in the dark. For the various treasures that were about to appear in the Een Dragon Canyon, how would the Xuansu and Ming sects be willing? As for the Sky Fox Shui family, they wouldn't easily let go of Gantian Mountain and the Zhong family. roughly 63,000 miles away from Donglin Cloud Continent, that Gantian mountain city. There was a tall tower with 49 floors. The base of the tower was below, and there was no land at all. It just floated above the cloud ocean, hidden in the clouds. At this moment, at the top of the tower, a young man wearing a tall hat was sitting upright. The entire tip of the tower was covered in sharp spikes, stabbing into the clouds. Lightning flashed, giving off a dangerous aura. This teen dressed like a scholar didn't care at all, looking seriously opposite him. It was a sword that gave off a deep purple intent, floating in midair. Occasionally it would spin, bringing out a series of flowing light. The young man's eyes, which had remained calm for the past few months, finally revealed a look of relief. "For Zong show this kid, you and I have been arguing for several months. Today we should have an outcome. I think the Venerable One knows about the news of the Central Cloud Continent." God Emperor Seed? How would I not know? That purple long sword shook slightly, actually able to give out a sound. Although our Kenzo sect rose up later, our strength is far from your Tsang Xingdao. However, such a huge matter can't be hidden from my people. Chapter 260. That male voice was clear and hoarse, filled with magnetism. It made one uncontrollably want to get close to his voice. It also brought with it a sharp and noble aura, its sharpness hidden within. I heard that in the north of Middle-earth, there is a teen from an aristocratic family. At 19 years old, he killed a grade 7 giant lightning venomous snake by himself with a sword. He is already favored by the various sects of the cloud world. This person is also a dual cultivator. Due to his family's teachings, his martial path and spiritual cultivation have entered the return to Sun Xuanwu ancestor realm. He can be said to be the top person in Donglin Cloud Continent in these 10 years. To think that his race hid this kid for so long. As he said that, the teen's eyes squinted. To be able to kill a grade 7 giant venomous snake with a grade 6 cultivation. Even if he is a dual cultivator, it is impossible. He probably isn't an emperor martial path, borrowing the strength of a country and an army to merge spirit and martial arts. Although this person comes from an aristocratic family, he doesn't control an army and hasn't been the ruler of a country. His clan, on the other hand, was full of ambition. They were preparing their troops, recruiting heroes, and accumulating strength. It was likely that they had the intention to rebel. Outsiders don't know what happened that day, but if I am not wrong, he should have comprehended under the suppression of the grade 7 giant venomous snake and entered the spirit and martial arts merging realm. With this person being 21 years old, it is really rare. Although his martial path talents aren't like Zong Shou, who reached one with the spirit at 13 years old. However, in the younger generation, if there is no one else who can merge spirit and martial arts, this kid is invincible. There was a hint of admiration in his voice, following which the male's tone became serious. I heard that this kid also uses the sword. The young man in scholarly clothes instantly laughed heartily when he heard this. So in this way, your sword sect intends to take that person in as well? That purple long sword didn't try to hide anything, the tip of the sword slightly pointing. We do have such intentions. Aren't your Tsang Xingdao tempted? To tell you the truth, Venerable One, I, the Lord of Tsang Xingdao, have never been tempted. The young man in scholarly attire chuckled and said with a hint of self-deprecation, more or less, he has some self-awareness. Tsang Xingdao has always been regarded as an evil spirit. It's fine for him to occasionally cause trouble in Middle-earth. However, if he were to attack these potential candidates, he would definitely be besieged. I, Tsang Xingdao, will not allow me, Tsang Xingdao, to lay a finger on them. His eyes flashed with a bright light. How about this? As long as the Kenzo sect is willing to give this Zong Shou to me, Tsang Xingdao, then this God Emperor Seed, our 6 gates of the common people, will help you fight for it. That purple sword instantly fell silent. A moment later, it asked doubtfully, "Are you really willing?" Although the sword Dao connecting with the spirit was not bad, the difference in comprehension ability could be made up for. The talent to merge spirit and martial arts is something one can only hope for. There might not even be one in 1,000 years. So what if I'm not willing? The young man in scholarly attire shook his head. His brows furrowed, his eyes filled with anticipation. I have high hopes for this Zhong Shou and he suits my personality. If he is trained well, his sword path attainments might not be weaker than that future direct disciple of your Kenzo sect. On the other hand, if you choose this kid, you have to be careful in the future. To have the talent to merge spirit and martial arts is not bad. However, to truly grasp it, you need to spend a lot of effort. If you are not careful, you might be crippled. There were many people who were able to merge spirit and martial arts before Ascended Realm. However, in the end, there weren't many who were able to do it. How I train my disciple has nothing to do with you. That purple sword didn't say any more nonsense, its body shaking once more. Since you have made up your mind, then this matter is settled. That is good. I will let you have Zhong Shou. However, Song Xingdao will also help my Kenzo sect to fight for him. When those words were said, the sword body shook once more. It directly pierced through the air and disappeared from the tip of the tower. When that scholarly attired teen saw that, he was filled with envy. This second primordial spirit was indeed very convenient. In the future, when he had the time, he would definitely make one. His heart also felt relaxed. During this month, he sat on the tip of the tower. It wasn't just a battle of words. No matter what the Kenzo sect did, they would fight for it and use their sword to snatch it. He muttered to himself, "It is finally settled." However, this fellow actually agreed just like that? Isn't he afraid of colluding with Zhang Xingdao? Those dog shit said that he colluded with evil demons? Could it be that the sword sect is really ambitious and intends to seize the throne of the Central Plains? Shaking his head in confusion, the scholarly attired teen stood up. Then, he yawned and stretched his back. Looking at the lightning on the spikes below getting thicker and thicker, he couldn't help but scoff. Casually stepping down, it caused this 10,000 feet giant tower to shake intensely. Okay. You don't need to chase me away. I will leave myself. Since that Kenzo sect leader has left, then I naturally don't need to stay here. Hey. If you weren't the only one who could cover my aura, do you think I would be in the mood to come to your broken place? What broken tower? It looks so ugly. In the future, even if you beg me, I won't be able to take you. Just as the giant tower was about to go berserk, numerous lightning snakes flashed. The scholarly attired teen waved his sleeves. He waved 1,000 miles of wind and clouds. With one step, he was hundreds of miles away. Traveling through the cloud layer, the teen suddenly exclaimed. He closed his eyes and entered deep thought. King Path secret technique? This Zhong Shou really knows what he learns. However, this is tough. He isn't a god emperor, so what does he need the energy of the emperor for? He laughed bitterly. Don't tell me this kid just entered the sect. I'd Song Xingdao have to lose a treasure? This child is really worrisome. However, he didn't have much worry on his face. Instead, his face was filled with joy. 2 days later, it was still the peak of Gantian Mountain. The peak of Gantian Mountain was actually really steep in the past. However, since Zhong Weiran built the city here, he flattened the mountain peak, creating a 10,000 feet wide flatland. Behind the Chongzhen Hall was a decently sized palace. However, the buildings built here were majestic. However, the decorations within were a little shabby. It allowed Zhong Shou to see how simple his father was when he was still the Monster King. At this moment, Zhong Shou was powerlessly sitting in a warm room. This was where Zhong Weiran dealt with administrative matters and could be considered a reading room. After Zhong Shou took over as the Monster King, naturally his father died and his son took over, occupying this place. However, at this moment, he was frowning. This was the first time he felt that the position of Monster King and City Lord wasn't so easy to be. During these 2 days, he was pretty much buried in beast hides and bamboo scrolls. That's right, beast hides and bamboo scrolls. In this era, paper was still a really rare thing. All the races under Gantian Mountain, the subordinate cities all used beast hides and bamboo scrolls to replace paper to write official reports to save on expenses. In the future, it would be called saving on official expenses. Moreover, a large portion of them used beast hides that didn't cost money. However, it was tough on Zhongsho. 2 days later, his body was covered in the smell of dirt and gunpowder. Even if he had 10,000 kilograms of strength, he would be pressed down by those bamboo scrolls until his hands felt sore. At this moment, the beast hides and bamboo scrolls piled up in the room still had a few days' worth of stock. Although this was half a year when Gantian Mountain didn't have a lord, which was why it was stored up. However, one could deduce how heavy the work of the city lord was. She really didn't understand how Zhong Weiran managed the matters of the 9 provinces so well, and at the same time how his martial path realm improved by leaps and bounds. Sighing, Zhongsho opened his mouth towards Ruoshui, who was passing beast hides, and said a few words. However, his voice was hoarse and he couldn't make much sound. In the end, he was helpless and decided to use his hands to make gestures. Ruoshui was totally confused as she looked at Zhongsho's hands waving randomly. After a short while, she guessed, "Prince is saying that you want to pick out the important ones?" At this moment, Zhong Weiran was so touched that he was about to cry. This girl finally understood it wasn't easy. Chu Shui at the side couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Young master, you are really unprecedented this time. That Sky Fox Zhong uncle couldn't do anything to you. In the end, you actually made yourself a mute. Young master, why are you laughing for no reason?" Zhongsho scoffed, but he couldn't make any sound. He could only stare furiously at Chu Shui and make a few sounds to show his unhappiness. This brat really didn't learn from her mistakes. A while ago, her Snow White but was viciously taught a lesson by him. This time her tail was so high up in the sky. She actually dared to mock his young master? Young master should be changing his voice. My uncle said that kids are all like that. Our monster race merged with the god-beast bloodline and is a little different. Looking at Zhongsho's Adam's apple, Chu Shui thought about her future. She couldn't help but feel a little worried. However, a moment later, she saw the threatening intent in Zhongsho's eyes. She instantly thought about something, her face flushing red. Following which her eyes turned slightly, scoffing coldly with a vengeful intent, however, for young master to laugh until he turns mute. I have never seen that before. It is said that in our throats there are still some remnant laryngeal bones. After some people become mute, they recover in a day or two, some need a month or two, even a few years. Some people can't even open their mouth to speak their entire lives. Isn't that right, Sister Ruoshui? Ruoshui was picking the beast skin that seemed to be more important in the pile of beast skins. When she heard that, she couldn't help but nod her head with a lost expression. Zhongsho was startled, worry appearing in his heart. During these 2 days, he used true qi to check. In his throat there were indeed some excess bones. His vocal cords also seemed to have changed slightly. The situation didn't seem serious. However, he wasn't sure when he would be able to speak and make a sound again. Did he have to say that if he didn't recover in a few months to a few years, then he could only be a mute for a few years? He really regretted it. That day on the heaven-worshipping altar, he was really too arrogant. Actually, it was not bad to act cool like other people. One didn't have to laugh out loud to show the aura of a hero. That was too vulgar. Chapter 261. Chu Shui found it amusing, placing a cup of chilled sour plum soup in front of Zhongsho. "Prince, eat this chilled sour plum soup. It can lower the fire and detoxify the poison. Our monster race can recover after eating this soup when we change our voice." Zhong Shou was seriously recalling the records about the monster race voice changing. Unfortunately, the books he read in his last life were either martial path books or talisman technique record. Or maybe some of them were useful for him to play games and understand the ancient secret history of the God Emperor era. Although he had read some interesting news when he was free, there was nothing related to the monster race voice changing. He only knew that there was such a thing. As for what the situation was, he didn't know. At this moment, he saw a bowl of red soup being placed in front of him by Chu Shui. Zhong Shou didn't think much about it, drinking it in one mouthful. His entire face, nose, brows, and even his ears were all scrunched up. What the hell was this? It was just too sour. Even his teeth were about to melt. When he finally recovered, Zhong Shou was speechless. He stared furiously at Chu Shui like he was trying to control her. This was revenge. This had to be revenge. This was a blatant prank. This girl was too narrow-minded. She had only left a few palm prints on her butt. Was there a need to do this? Chu Shui's lips instinctively curled up. Then, she forcefully restrained herself. She broke the bowl expressionlessly, her voice soft and innocent. "Young master is blaming me again? This time it wasn't Shui's fault. I already said that it was sour plum soup. You didn't hear it clearly." Zhong Shou scoffed coldly. Using sign language to speak was too complicated. He wanted to use writing to replace it. Ruoshui passed a stack of beast skin over. While thinking that Ruoshui's speed was really quick, Zhong Shou casually took it and took a look, following which he froze, totally stunned. After a short while, Zhong Shou came back to his senses, looking at Ruoshui with a questioning gaze. Only to see Ruoshui frown in confusion, using her finger to point at the pile of beast skin bamboo scrolls, saying confidently, "Young master, these are the most important." Zhong Shou's face was bitter. All of a sudden he didn't know what he should say. Okay, these beast skins were indeed important. However, it was only the leather that was slightly more valuable. It was very precious and rare. In Ruoshui's eyes. So naturally they were very important. These two girls weren't reliable. Shaking his head, Zhong Shou sighed. He picked up the pile of expensive animal skins and looked at them carefully. After taking a look, he noticed Ruoshui's actions. The generals and officials of Gantian Mountain City weren't just trying to save money. If it was an important matter, they would choose a slightly more expensive beast skin to record to gain the attention of the higher-ups. At this moment, what was placed in front of Zhong Shou was a backlog of work. Actually, more than half of it had been dealt with by the people below. He just needed to use it as a human-shaped seal and press a Monster King seal on it. However, at this moment, the seal that belonged to him wasn't carved, so he could only use a signature to replace it. However, there were many fresh matters that were reported in front of him. The two cities in the northwest have calculated the number of destroyed houses, a total of 24,326. Such that hundreds of thousands of people in our city have their homes destroyed and they can only eat and sleep in the open. If this drags on for too long, it might harm the ruler's prestige. Ruler, please allocate 50,000 grade 3 beast crystals to save the people and rebuild the houses. Minister Ren Bo has submitted a memorial to the emperor, please make a quick decision. Zhong Shou's brows instantly rose up. He wanted to get some money from the Gantian Mountain Treasury to make up for the losses at Ruohai Straits last time. Just like that, there were officials who thought of ways to stretch their hands into his belt. How could he let that happen? He also didn't know how to run a business. Luckily, he relied on the knowledge of the future to earn some money in Jiefu City. Was it easy for him? In the future, there might not be such a good thing. Naturally, he wouldn't allow it. Zhong Shou didn't hesitate and wanted to draw a huge cross on it. However, just as the brush landed, he sighed and wrote a word. Forget it, 50,000 grade 3 beast crystals wasn't much, he could afford it. No matter what, he had to pay for those houses. Following which was the second portion. following which Zhong Shou's brows were totally furrowed. I have calculated all the rewards and compensation from 2 days ago, a total of 22 million grade 3 beast crystals. This matter can't be delayed. However, between officials, it is best to be clear about Gantian Mountain City matters. The 690,000 troops in the city are for a private battle and not for a public battle. With the ruler paying, we can win the hearts of the troops. Zhong Shou's lips were already cramping up. 22 million grade 3 beast crystals. This wasn't a small number and was enough to give him a headache. Grade 3 and Grade 4 was 100 times difference. However, its value was equivalent to 32,200 Grade 4 beast crystals, 32 Grade 7 beast crystals. Even now, when the value of beast crystals had plummeted, it wasn't a small number. Looking at the signature at the back, it was Rin Bo. Who the hell was this guy? Why was he trying to fish money out of his pockets? Hooking his finger at Chu Shui to let her stand behind him, Zhong Shou pointed at the name on the beast's skin. This brat didn't understand at first. Only when Zhong Shou gestured did she understand. Prince is talking about Prime Minister Rin? I know. Chu Shui's soft chin nodded like a chick pecking at rice. The ruler found him a few years ago and said that he was good at management, which was what our Gantian Mountain lacked. Then, he was appointed Prime Minister. In the past, our Gantian Mountain didn't have such an official position. Speaking of which, you have seen him during the heaven-worshipping ceremony. This person is amazing. Since he became the Prime Minister, this Gantian Mountain has been really busy. Many people from the tribes and cities have traveled thousands of miles to do business here. Zhong Shou thought about it, but he really didn't have any impression. Anyways, after tomorrow would be his first court assembly. At that time, he would naturally see him, so he didn't think too much about it. He flipped through a few beast skins, instinctively touching the money bag at his waist, his heart turning cold. This fellow was too vicious when it came to money. What equipment damage, what war horse injuries, what compensation for the dead. Anyways, he was using different methods to get money from him. A subject who always reached his hand into the ruler's pocket definitely wasn't a good subject. In his heart, he marked Renbo as a bad person. Following which, Zhong Shou looked at this person's name and pulled it out, casually tossing it to the side and not bothering about it. Anyways, when he saw this person's name, he was annoyed. Oh, a day and a half ago, Xian Mountain City Lord Xian Yuan Tong was drinking in the manor. After hearing the report from his subordinate, he laughed out loud, saying that my eyes are really sharp, choosing a good son-in-law for my daughter. Then, his true qi exploded and he stepped into the ascended realm. Kiki. So father-in-law also knows that I, Zhong Shou, am an amazing son-in-law. However, ascended realm? That isn't a good time. Zhong Shou sighed. If Xian Yuan Tong didn't break through to the ascended realm, he could shock a region. After he did, he couldn't help at all. This father-in-law of his was really useless. He looked at the signature, only to see a line of words written neatly and elegantly. Hidden Guard Commander Ruoshui's report. Hidden Guard Commander Ruoshui? Zhong Shou was astonished, looking at Ruoshui and pointing at his report. The latter nodded her head, pointing at her nose, her beautiful eyes filled with a smile. Zhong Shou was speechless. So his sister Ruoshui was not only the commander of the hidden guards to ensure his safety, but she was also in charge of gathering intel. To be able to stretch her hands into Xian Yuan Tong's house and his father-in-law didn't know about it. Her ability to use information was really amazing. Looking at the back, there was finally something that he was interested in. Yunxia Mountain City Lord Feng knew, a day ago during the feast, a red swift bird suddenly sent a message. He was immediately enraged. During the banquet, he killed several servants with his bare hands. He said that this kid is good at scheming and will be my enemy in the future. I should kill him soon. Following which, I had a secret meeting with many Yunxia generals and officials and couldn't get the details. Blazing Flame Mountain City Lord Xiongba suddenly got drunk yesterday and lost his composure. He first said that since the heavens gave birth to him, why give birth to another Zhong Weiran? He also said that giving birth should be like Zhong Shou, that Zhong Weiran gave birth to a good son, all my sons can't compare to him. After which, he found his daughter Princess Xian Yu to discuss. Today afternoon, he removed Xiong Kuei from his position as prince. He made Princess Xian Yu the heir. Naturally, the signature at the back was also Ruoshui. Zhong Shou smiled as he read, feeling a little gleeful. As expected, he shocked the world with a single brilliant feat. He was also surprised. This Xiongba was really bold. He didn't make any of his sons and instead went against tradition to make a girl the heir. Could it be that this Princess Xian Yu had something special about her? When he had time in the future, he was going to ask that Xiong Kuei. Speaking of which, since he traveled day and night to rush over to Gantian Mountain, he didn't bother much about him. Who knows what happened to him now? Did he die or not? Flipping to the next report, Zhong Shou smiled once more. This time it came from Chiu. The Sinner camp is filled with people. Zhenshan Pass has 3,700 people. Within Gantian Mountain City, there are a total of 44,000 people. They have all been sent 10 miles outside of the city. I want to split it into 5 towns, each with a commander, please allow it. Zhong Shou's attention was on Zhenshan Pass, on those 3,700 people. These soldiers who personally saw him use the 6-god defensive knife technique to kill 2 Xuanwu ancestors didn't disappear. How rare. He originally thought that with the methods of Wujua Villa and Taiyuan sect, even if they didn't kill them, they would think of a way to make them disappear. They were actually able to return to Gantian Mountain City perfectly fine. Those few people knew that they couldn't suppress it anymore. Or was it that the disciple recruitment battle had already ended and they weren't willing to suppress it anymore? If it was as he thought, then it was a good thing. It meant that he was very close to the martial books of these 2 peak powers. On the report, under the word commander, there were the words Xiong Kuei. Following which was the next report. Zhong Shou's eyes lit up. Suddenly he was really interested. Chapter 262. On the document, under the word commander, there was the word Xiong Kuei. Following which was the next document. Zhong Shou's eyes lit up. Suddenly he was really interested. This matter wasn't a huge matter of the country, it wasn't even a small matter. It was just a small matter brought up by a mid-level official. I heard that Shirley Ling Xiangding is getting more and more prosperous, tax revenue is increasing, gathering many rich kids in the city to drink and drink day and night, causing the number of fights and injuries to increase. In my eyes, it is best to strengthen the control of this place. If we can collect security taxes from the 300 brothels here, our Gantian Mountain City will be able to increase the number of troops. Drinking and drinking? Brothels? So within Gantian Mountain City, there was a red light district. Kiki, 300 brothels, this scale is not bad. The brothels of ancient times, this really makes one interested and want to take a look. His eyes rolled. Zhong Shou made a hand signal towards Chu Shui. Shui looked on for a moment, her eyes filled with shock. Young master, what do you want to say? Shui doesn't understand? Zhong Shou couldn't help but roll his eyes. This brat was actually acting dumb in front of him. His brows furrowing, Zhong Shou casually took a beast's skin and wrote, "Where is Shirley Ling Xiangding?" Chu Shui pouted when she saw the situation, pouting. Young master, Shui is a girl, how would I know where this Shirley Ling Xiangding is? Zhong Shou thought about it and agreed. This Shui was most probably lying. However, it was indeed a little inappropriate to ask her about this matter. He looked towards Ruoshui with a questioning gaze. But he saw that Ruoshui was also smiling faintly, unwilling to answer his question. Zhong Shou sighed softly. He scribbled a few words on the animal skin, Let's go. We'll go incognito and observe the people. Then he stood up and strode out of the door. Ruoshui didn't know, Chu Shui didn't know. Those guards outside definitely knew about it. Chu Shui couldn't help but panic. She rushed forward a few steps and spread out her two jade arms like an old hen. She stopped Zhong Shou and said, "Young master, you can't. Grandfather had said that tomorrow would be the first court meeting of the young lord. These memorials had to be dealt with. If you want to tour Gantian Mountain City, there will be plenty of chances in the future. Isn't it that surely Ling Xiangding? Shui will definitely accompany you." When Zhong Shou heard this, he laughed silently and walked back. Just when Chu Shui thought that he had changed his mind, Zhong Shou directly kicked the table and flipped it. Then, he walked past Chu Shui. He thought to himself that he was dumb. He actually put in so much effort to deal with these complicated memorials. It was really dumb. He came back to fight for the Monster King position to complete the wishes of the previous Zhong Shou. 2 days ago, this wish of his had been fulfilled, and his mind was free of worries. He had also obtained many benefits. Both his spiritual cultivation and martial path had improved by a lot. At this moment, it was good that he wasn't prepared to burn the bridge after crossing it. Was he really going to work hard every day to be a virtuous ruler of a country? His life wish was to study the martial path. His first goal was to merge hundreds of sword techniques and create a true one-origin sword. As for this Gantian Mountain City, he actually had a conscience. When he was free, he would take care of it. He just wanted to have a clear conscience. However, before he focused on the martial path, he had to take a look at this so-called Shirley Ling Xiangding and the 300 brothels to relax his heart. That wasn't right. He was also observing the people. When he was deep in the palace dealing with administrative matters, how would he know the hardships of the people? I can't be any more wise than you. Since he was visiting incognito, then naturally he couldn't wear extravagant clothing. Changing into a green robe, Zhong Shou walked out of this palace known as Hanyan Palace. Then, there were tens of guards following behind. A full 40 Xiantian experts and 4 martial ancestor experts. They were all dressed in heavy armor, looking majestic and majestic. Zhong Shou felt that these people were too much of a hindrance and told them to disperse. Just like that, he brought the frowning Chu Shui as well as Ruoshui, who didn't care about anything from start to finish down Gantian Mountain. In a short 2 days, this Gantian Mountain city had settled down. It was night time and the streets were filled with people. Be it the streets or alleys, they were all bustling. Zhong Shou walked over. At the start, he was filled with curiosity as he looked around. The primitive ancient city style. If this was in the future, it would be filled with tourists. Then, he slowly calmed down, his brows tightly furrowed. The people of this era didn't bathe often, especially the commoners. Their bodies smelled really thick. Unlike his Shui and Ruoshui, who smelled really good. Next was that there was no sewer system. Rubbish was thrown all over, making it really messy. In some places there was a pungent smell. Zhong Shou used true qi to cover his ears and nose, filtering it before he felt a little better. Following which numerous voices drilled into his ears. At the start, Zhong Shou didn't care. However, when he heard the words city lord, ruler, prince, Zhong Shou, only then did he notice that on the streets and alleys, be it the old aunts and uncles or those young and hot-blooded youths, they were all discussing the huge change 2 days ago. Only then did Zhong Shou's brows furrow, acting like he didn't care. He stopped in front of a small stall and acted like he was looking around. His ears, however, perked up like a rabbit to listen to his surroundings. I heard that a few thousand heads were chopped off that night. That was really tragic. Tell me, why is Jun Shang so heartless? I heard that there were 1,000 of his race members. Women? What do you know? Since it concerns the battle for the throne, naturally that is the case. For such things, the son killing the father killing the son, that is normal. What are a few thousand heads considered? These people plotted and rebelled, they deserved it. They can't blame the ruler. I also heard that the people who died were those direct descendants of the Sky Fox bloodline. These people usually acted arrogantly in the city, and now they finally got their retribution. How fortunate! The hard work of the previous ruler didn't land in the hands of outsiders. The previous ruler was a good person, a virtuous ruler. The ruler is the son of the previous ruler, and his ability to rule the country is definitely not bad. To be able to inherit the throne, the heavens are protecting him. In the past, I heard those people say that young Master Zhongshe was not bad. However, I always felt that this person wasn't reliable. This is great, he is finally dead. Without these demons causing trouble, our Gantian mountain city will be able to be peaceful. In my eyes, with our ruler's skills, he can make our Gantian mountain even more prosperous and prosperous. Zhongshe's lips were originally curled up, smiling. However, when he heard that his ability to rule the country was definitely not bad, and that he could make Gantian mountain prosperous and prosperous, his face couldn't help but turn slightly red. He was planning to stay here for a few days before packing up and leaving. However, I heard that when the ruler was the prince, didn't he not know martial arts? Tisk. Who said that? The ruler personally killed Zhongshe that day. I heard that the Xuanwu ancestors that those people invited all died in his hands. Only then did he settle down on that heaven-worshipping altar. In the past, he just hid and didn't do anything. Now he really shocked everyone. What was he called? Oh right. He was pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger. How would the prince be like Zhongshe, that show-off, who showed off? That is the style of an aristocratic family. What top genius of Donglin Cloud Continent, spit? Is he even worthy? Compared to the ruler, he is just trash. Not only that, have you all heard? The ruler has already created his own race called the Gantian Zong family. There are only a few of the Sky Fox Zong family left. I heard that the Sky Fox Zong family uncle Zhongzheng objected, but in the end, the ruler forced him back. That uncle is said to be at the peak of the Return to Sun realm, half a foot away from the Day Wandering realm. Such an amazing person couldn't do anything to the prince. In my eyes, the most amazing thing is the ruler's strategy. Before this, he didn't even attack. Just tens of thousands of East City troops suppressed the Wind Bear and Eye Wolf races. Ling Feikong's race leader position was also removed. If it wasn't for that traitor Zhongshe colluding with the enemy to assassinate the ruler. Other people probably don't know that the ruler is actually a top talent, a top expert. The more Zhongshe heard, the happier he felt. He thought to himself that the people of Gantian Mountain were really good, able to differentiate right from wrong. Zhong Weiran was indeed amazing, managing here for 10 years and making the hearts of tens of millions of people work for him. Following which, there wasn't anything good to hear. Zhongshe casually bought 3 exquisite jade hairpins, one for Chu Shui's hair, one for Ruoshui, and the last one he hid in his sleeve. It made the two of them delighted. Following which, just as he was about to turn around and leave, his face froze up, fluctuating between green and white. Only to hear another person not far away say in shock, So you only heard of this? The ruler isn't simple. Did you all hear about the grade 6 beasts that rampaged in the South Luofang city a few years ago? Other people said that the ruler personally acted. However, a few days ago I heard people say that the ruler helped to kill them. A few years ago, the prince could personally kill those grade 6 beasts. You also heard of this matter? It seems like it is most probably true. However, the news I have is not only this. 3 years ago, the Een serpent caused chaos in the evil spirit moat. It was the prince who acted and forced the demon to retreat. Actually, when the ruler was 10, he had already defeated many talents in Gantian Mountain and had no opponent. The ruler was worried that the prince was too strong, which was why he sent the ruler to Linhai College to cultivate his heart and mind. Also, that day on Gantian Mountain Peak, It was said that not only a few Xuanwu ancestors died. There was also an ascended ancestor who died under the ruler's sword. Zhong Shou's lips twitched when he heard that. Why were these words getting more and more preposterous? At the start, he thought that the rumors were distorted, but slowly he felt that something wasn't right. These words were said with a lot of detail. It sounded like it was true, but it was filled with flaws, like someone purposely did it. Furthermore, those people were most definitely very familiar with his past experiences. Chapter 263. In the next instance, Zhong Shou's brows rose up, killing intent rising into the heavens. Only to hear another person say mysteriously, "Have you all heard of Zhong Yuan? He is known as the Purple Lightning Spear. He trampled thousands of troops in Ruahai Straits, our Gantian Mountain unparalleled general. In the past, he followed Zhong Hao, but for some reason he followed the ruler. Other people find it weird, but I heard that when the ruler was in Linhai College, he liked that and harmed numerous handsome guys. As the ruler was too flirtatious, he was chased out of Linhai College. Oh, I have heard of this matter." Opposite that person, there was another male who gave an evil smile. "I heard that there was also that 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling. A few months ago, he was defeated by the ruler in one sword. Then the ruler saw that he was beautiful and wanted to take him in as a toy. In the end, his personality was too strong and he wasn't willing, so he was killed by the ruler. There was actually such a matter. I really didn't expect it. The ruler actually likes that." The people at the side all had a look of realization on their faces. There was even an old man who said with a pained heart, "The morals of the world are degenerating day by day, the world is corrupt." It was the ruler who fought all year round and didn't teach his kid well, causing the ruler to walk down the wrong path. I knew that when he was young. He liked to stare at pretty boys when he roamed around Gantian Mountain City. Zhong Shou's forehead had many green veins popping out. What kind of nonsense was this? Chu Shui at the side was laughing so hard that she suffered internal injuries, but she didn't dare to laugh out loud. She could only step on the ground, beating her chest and stomping her feet. Ruoshui's eyes curved into crescents. She used her hand to cover her mouth, turning her head to the side. Her body trembled like a willow tree branch swaying with the wind. The words at the back were getting worse and worse. Zhong Shou was too lazy to dirty his ears, deciding to retract his hearing. He thought to himself that he was only planning to go to that Shirley Ling Xiangding to take a look, but now he had no choice but to go. If he didn't prove his strength, how would he be able to stop these rumors? He snorted coldly and asked Ruoshui, "Is there any other news that hasn't been reported?" Ruoshui first shook her head, then nodded slightly and said, "There is some news." Ruoshui had already been chosen, but in the end she was kicked over by Monarch. Whilst speaking, he took out a few pieces of beast skin with words written on them. Yesterday morning, there were people spreading rumors in Gantian Mountain City. Ruoshui checked for a long time but didn't find any traces of them. "I only know that there will definitely be ascended ancestors or day wandering realm spirit masters." Zhong Shou took the beast skin and saw that it was still news about Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain, two big demon cities. Yesterday Yunxia Mountain City Lord Feng Nu suddenly laughed out loud in the reading room last night. He said that it was just a rumor and that there was no need to believe it completely. That Gantian kid thought that by spreading such rumors, he could really become a top expert? Gantian Mountain City only feared Hu Qianqiu, Zhong Gang, Qiu Wei, Zhong Yuan, and a few others. With the help of these few people, even an idiot can become the ruler of Gantian Mountain. Blazing Flame Mountain City Lord Xiongba, after he woke up this morning, he argued with many elders in the race. During the meal, he said that Gantian Mountain Zhong Shou couldn't be trusted and that the rumors were too exaggerated. His attitude seemed to have changed and he gave up on Princess Xuanyu. "Let's set up another discussion." Zhong Shou grinned, and then without hesitation, he tore the beast-skin document into pieces. Thinking that since there was an ascended ancestor interfering, then this matter was most probably done by Lei Dong and Zhao Yinran. What a good move to confuse the public, passing off fish eyes as pearls, mixing real and fake news together, and adding in some exaggerated word. It could cause this storm to temporarily calm down. He had really underestimated them. However, forget about the rumors from before, anyways he wouldn't lose a piece of meat. Only these two people actually dared to say that Zhong Shou liked guys. This was really intolerable. In the future, don't let him have a chance, if not he would pay with blood. He didn't hesitate anymore, Zhong Shou directly walking towards Shirley Ling Xiangding. Before he went down the mountain, he had asked a guard for directions. Actually, he could see it from the peak of Gantian Mountain. Not far from the foot of the mountain, red lights were hung up. In the evening, it was already unusually bustling. It was said to be 10 miles, but it was far more than that. It also wasn't just the 300 mentioned in the document. The 300 brothels probably only referred to the larger-scale brothels here. He had already asked and found out that out of the 300 brothels, only 3 were the most outstanding. One of them was the Quiet Cloud Pavilion. Not only were the ladies the most beautiful, but there were also tens of them who came from the Central Cloud continent. They were all skilled in the 4 arts. They were also gentle and knew how to read the situation, and were sought after by many. There was even a famous female musician who was known for her zither, even in the Central Dynasty, who was in charge here. Along the way, Zhong Shou only saw that this street was filled with ladies with heavy makeup. On the 2 sides of the buildings, their sleeves were waving. With his hearing at the congenital realm, he only felt that all he heard were obscene words and laughter. Moreover, he even occasionally saw people hugging and flirting on the street. It really opened one's eyes. Chu Shui's face was flushed red, she didn't know where to place her eyes. Ruoshui didn't care, instead, she was observing with interest, especially the scenes of men and women kissing. It was like she was studying the difference from when Zhong Shou was treating her poison. Zhong Shou came from the future and didn't care about such scenes. Instead, he was disappointed. They were all ordinary women, and couldn't even compare to a finger of Xianyuan Iran and Chushu. If that Quiet Cloud Pavilion was of such a standard, then he didn't need to come to this Shirley Ling Xiangding in the future. Within Gantian Mountain City, the water system was everywhere. When Zhong Shou followed the pitiful guard that Chu Shui had taken care of, he tearfully pointed out the path. When he crossed a small bridge, he felt that the environment had changed. Although this place was at the center of Shirley Ling Xiangding, it was really quiet and elegant, like it was independent of the mortal world. The shore was covered in willows, pieces of green bamboo swaying in the wind. 3 to 5 pavilions were spread out. This scenery had a different and otherworldly feeling. Zhong Shou's eyes instantly lit up. He thought to himself that the person who designed this place was indeed not ordinary. His taste was exquisite, then the ladies in this Quiet Cloud Pavilion were definitely not bad. He quickly walked forward. Just as he walked a few steps, he heard zither music spread over. Zhong Shou couldn't help but stop and listen carefully. He only felt that it was really clear and melodious, like there was a girl whispering in his ear. Coincidentally, it was a place with a bright moon. When the music entered his ears, he felt really relaxed and happy. Even Chu Shui quietened down and listened carefully. Unfortunately, the zither music had come to an end and stopped in just a moment. Zhong Shou frowned, his heart filled with regret. He quickened his footsteps and walked towards where the zither music came from. Not far away, a 5-story building appeared in his eyes. However, as soon as he got closer, another burst of laughter could be heard. Good zither skills. Miss Yunlan really plays the zither well. Even a rough person like me is mesmerized by it. Miss, please drink this cup of wine as a form of respect. His voice was rough and his aura was terrifying. However, at this moment it was a little spoilsport. Zhong Shoksan said that this Miss Yunlan was definitely that famous zither master in the central cloud continent. As expected from a great master, this zither music actually had the ability to soothe one's heart. If a spirit master whose soul was injured heard the zither music, they would be able to heal their soul. This woman's spiritual cultivation was definitely not ordinary. However, why did such a person come to such a desolate place like Donglin Cloud Continent? Alright, why did this voice sound so familiar? It seemed to be Hu Zhongyuan? As expected, he heard another person say disdainfully, Hu Zhongyuan, stop acting so elegant. With your personality, how can you tell if the zither music is good or bad? When Hu Zhongyuan heard that, he wasn't annoyed, nonsense. Although I, Hu Zhongyuan, am a rough person and don't understand such things, I can tell if the zither music is good or bad. Miss Yunlan's zither skills are better than other zither masters. It makes me forget myself. What is it called? 3 months of not knowing the taste of meat. In the building in the distance there was a loud laugh. Someone smiled and asked, Zhongyuan, you followed the ruler a few months ago and didn't leave his side. You are already his trusted aide. The ruler has just ascended and I heard that he has been busy in the Hanyan Palace for 2 days and hasn't come out. You lazy fellow playing around here, isn't that a little bad? TSK, what are you afraid of? I, Hu Zhongyuan, am dumb, what can I help with? Hu Zhongyuan laughed out loud, replying like he didn't care at all, anyways the ruler doesn't know. The ruler probably doesn't have time to care about me. Tomorrow I will just act obedient in front of him. When Zhong Shou heard that, he laughed coldly. If these people didn't mention it, he wouldn't have thought about it. During these 2 days, he was so busy in his reading room that he didn't even rest. He didn't stop for even a moment. This Hu Zhongyuan, on the other hand, actually visited prostitutes and drank here every day. His days were just too comfortable. Just as he was thinking about how he should deal with this guy, he suddenly realized something. Suddenly, a mysterious laughter rang out from the pavilion. "Oh right. There is one thing that other people don't know about, but Hu Zhongyuan, you definitely know about it. The rumors outside say that Zhongyuan and the ruler have a close relationship. Is it true that you are following beside the prince? Does Jun Shang really have that kind of hobby? It's that, why are there so many people asking about it these 2 days? Anyways I, Hu Zhongyuan, haven't personally seen it." Just as everyone within the building sighed in disappointment, Hu Zhongyuan's tone changed. His tone was really serious, however. "Let me tell you all that the ruler does have an ambiguous relationship with Zhongyuan. Do you all know that when the ruler saw Zhongyuan for the first time, he touched his entire body? He also let me tie him up and hang him on a tree. At that time, I was glad that I looked tough, although I was handsome in Gantian Mountain City. Although I am handsome in Qiantian City, the ruler probably doesn't like it." Chapter 264. Zhong Shou's body shuddered, and then he thought to himself, "Great. I was wondering who was spreading rumors. So one of the sources was you, Hu Zhongyuan." Scoffing heavily, Zhong Shou strode towards the building like a tiger. A cold glow flashed in his eyes, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his lips. This building was roughly 5 stories high, painted red on the outside. It was both elegant and majestic. Just as Zhong Shou walked to the entrance, a woman walked out of the building. She was about the same age as Xianyuan Iran, her body was alluring, and she was elegant. Behind her followed 2 maids, one carrying a zither and the other holding a pipa. Looking at Zhong Shou walk over, the woman was startled. Then she broke out into a laugh and shook her head. "What is wrong with this world? Even such a young child knows how to seek pleasure in this place filled with poisonous fireworks." She turned around and said to the middle-aged woman who was sending him off, "Auntie Zhang, give me some face today. This kid is too young, so don't let him in." Zhong Shou's brows were originally furrowed when he heard that. However, when he heard this woman's voice, it was like a clear spring, pleasant to the ear. Only then did he raise his head and look at this woman. Only then did he notice that this woman not only had a great body, but her looks were also top grade. She was elegant, her skin was like snow, her eyes were like clear water, looking around. She gave off an otherworldly aura, making one feel ashamed of their inferiority. However, wasn't this woman a little too controlling? No matter what, this body was already over 14 years old and wasn't close to a kid. Moreover, the size of the elephant below was already quite large. No, he wasn't here to seek pleasure, but to find that Hu Zhongyuan to take revenge. Following which he heard the middle-aged auntie smile. Miss Yunlan, don't worry. Such a small kid, even if you didn't say it, I wouldn't let him in. This teen's identity isn't simple, and our quiet cloud pavilion isn't willing to offend his parents. Zhong Shou snorted with anger in his eyes. That was probably the person who had played the zither just now, Miss Yunlan. After nodding her head in satisfaction, she left with her two maids. Zhong Shou didn't bother and continued to walk towards the door. Sure enough, with just a glance from the middle-aged auntie, several muscular, 7-foot-tall men blocked the way. Then, that Auntie Zhang sneered again. You're just a child. What are you doing here? She was even brought here by a maid. Tranquil Cloud Pavilion is the #1 brothel in Shirley Ling Xiangding. It's not a place for children like you to play. Young master, please leave as soon as possible. We don't do business with you. Zhong Shou snorted coldly and was about to force his way in. This Gantian mountain city was his. He didn't believe that anyone could stop him from entering. Just as such a thought flashed across his mind, Zhong Shou stopped in his tracks. Then, he squinted his eyes, looking warily towards the pavilion. He was shocked, only to see numerous strong auras rise up at the same time. At this moment, his physical body had merged with a portion of the lightning phoenix essence, and his martial path had greatly improved. In this Gantian mountain city, he could activate the strength of a country at any moment. Those who could make him feel slightly threatened were the grade 6 Xuanwu ancestors and returned to Sun Spirit Masters. And at this moment, in this small brothel, he actually sensed a total of 4 Xian martial realm experts. As for return to Sun Realm Spirit Masters, there were also 3 and above. How was this a brothel? It was a place filled with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Within this small building, just the peak strength of this world alone, there were 7 people. It was pretty much half of the peak experts in his Gantian mountain city. Such strength, no matter where they were, they could rule an area and build a city and a country. Why would they stay here to open a brothel? Zhong Shou's thoughts of forcefully charging and instantly disappeared without a trace. It wasn't that he was worried. As long as these 7 people were within Gantian Mountain City, he didn't care about them. He was just instinctively wary. What was the goal of this quiet cloud pavilion? Were they here to assassinate him? Or were they here to scout for intel? Following which, all these guesses were thrown aside. This brothel had been open for a period of time and couldn't have gathered so many experts in a short 2 days. It was also impossible that they didn't recognize him. As for scouting for intel on Gantian Mountain City, that was even more impossible. With 7 experts gathered, they could all try to rebel. That Auntie Zhang didn't look at his expression, only curling up her lips, still with a smile that wasn't a smile. Young man, I know that the 2 maids beside you are both spirit and martial arts dual cultivators and have extraordinary strength. Young man, you must have a prominent family background. However, our quiet cloud pavilion isn't something you can offend. I think you'd better go back as soon as possible. Following which, she looked towards Zhong Shou's lower body in disdain. So young, who knows if the hair down there is fully grown. You actually ran over to this Shirley Ling Xiangding. If you want to have fun, wait for 2 years. When she said that, this Auntie Zhang didn't bother about Zhong Shou anymore. her body elegantly walking into the main hall. Zhong Shou was so angry that he was amused. Instead of being angry, he laughed. In his heart, he had a rough understanding of the background of this quiet cloud pavilion. It was said that in Tsangxingdao, there was a sect known as the Qinin school that loved to cultivate in the brothels of the human world. The disciples were either Guqin masters, singers, or courtesans. They entered the scene of entertainment to gain experience in the world of mortals and sharpen their state of mind. Out of the 6 schools and 3 sects of Tsangxingdao, this Qinin school had the weirdest way of doing things. Their methods were also the most peaceful. They didn't occupy spiritual houses or shrines, cultivating in the brothels of the mortal world. With that, he was in a tough spot. According to his temperament, he would have immediately mobilized the troops to raze this quiet cloud pavilion to the ground. Although there were many experts within, since he couldn't see the true strength of Ruoshui, who was slowly recovering from the poison, then no matter how strong she would be limited. However, since there was a 50% chance that she would be from the same sect in the future, it wasn't easy for him to do anything. Just as his heart was hesitating, Zhong Shou felt that his sleeves were being tugged by someone. He turned his head and looked, only to see Chu Shui looking over with a pitiful expression, obviously unwilling to enter. He couldn't help but sigh, thinking to himself that it was okay. He would temporarily let this place go and think about it in the future. He coldly sized up this 5-story building. In the next instance, he heard someone say, "Be careful." He raised his head and looked up, only to see one of the windows open. A few girls were giggling as they splashed a basin of clear water outside. Zhong Shou's chest was instantly filled with rage. His body was extremely nimble as he dodged to the back together with Chu Shui and Ruoshui. Just as Zhong Shou's body rose up by half a foot, Zhong Shou's eyes flashed. He felt the energy in his body suddenly become chaotic. Then, he totally lost control and fell to the ground with his face facing the sky. In the next instance, the water was splashed right in front of his eyes. Zhong Shou didn't even have time to dodge. His entire body was drenched from top to bottom. Instantly, a series of giggles sounded out from above, like silver bells. Chushua couldn't help but laugh out loud. She hurriedly helped Zhong Shou up, only to see her young master looking over with a suspicious gaze. In his heart, he was filled with questions and didn't understand. Only when Ruoshui reminded him with a smile that wasn't a smile did he come back to his senses. Then, he shook his head like a rattle drum, saying furiously, "Young master, how can you suspect Shui? I don't have time to stick some luck talisman on you. Sister Ruoshui can testify for me." Zhong Shou was startled. Since it wasn't Chu Shui, then what was the reason? True energy being chaotic, such a small probability event, how could it happen so coincidentally? Speaking of which, the only thing that could be related to that luck talisman was 2 days ago. He had used 5 to 6 luck praying talismans on his body. Thinking back to his vocal cords tearing and thinking back to the situation just now, Zhong Shou couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He instantly understood. It was most probably because he had used too many luck praying talismans and the accumulated bad luck exploded out at this moment. It seems like this cheating device wasn't as perfect as he thought. He had to be careful when using it in the future. Following which he was so furious that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. After standing up, Zhong Shou's face turned purple. His eyes were like sharp swords as he swept this quiet cloud pavilion. This time was a huge humiliation. If he didn't take revenge, he wouldn't have the face to meet anyone in the future. Preposterous. What Qinin sect, they were so arrogant. Chu Shui found it amusing that Zhong Shou was humiliated in front of this brothel. She was delighted, thinking that this young master wouldn't run over to this Shirley Ling Xiangding in this period of time. On the surface, she acted like they had a common enemy. "Young master, Why don't I call Brother Zhong Yuan to bring troops over and flatten this quiet cloud pavilion? These people are just too infuriating. When Zhong Shou heard that, he didn't agree or disagree. His eyes rolled and he had an idea. He snorted softly and turned around to leave. His face was actually smiling evilly, thinking to himself that just flattening this brothel, how could it calm the rage in his chest? Moreover, this method was too underhanded and too barbaric. He needed to convince people with his morals, to make the master of this quiet cloud pavilion personally come to his door, that would really vent his anger. Moreover, the reason would be open and aboveboard, not leaving any weakness for others to use against him. When Chu Shui saw the situation, she was slightly stunned. With her young master's personality, he never left grudges. How was it possible for him to walk away without saying a word after being angered to such an extent? Moreover, he did it on their own territory? This wasn't Zhong Shou's usual style. Could it be that this quiet cloud pavilion really had some sort of background? It was so strong that even the young master was fearful. Just as she was about to ask, Ruoshui suddenly pulled her hand, smiling as she pointed at the shirt on Zhong Shou's body. Although those watermarks were slowly being evaporated by the true qi that Zhong Shou released from his body. However, he still looked really haggard. Not only was his hair messy, but after falling to the ground, his back was also stained. Chu Shui instantly understood. That's right. To act out at this time, wasn't it telling others that the young master had lost face here and suffered a loss? As expected, in the young master's heart, face was more important than hatred. Chapter 265. Deep in the cloud ocean, outside of a palace that was wrapped in mist, Long Ruo was sitting on a tall hill, his expression cold. This place was below the cloud ocean, stabbing into the sky. However, the portion that reached out of the cloud ocean was only a small portion. In front of him was a silver-white sword light hanging 3 inches in front of him, circling and swimming. Long Ruo's brows were tightly furrowed. He stared at the sword in front of him, deep in thought. At this moment, if there was someone who was good at spiritual cultivation here, they would be able to see it within his soul. There were 3 dazzling golden runes that were projecting rays of light onto the sword. The light was extinguishing like it was going to see through this sword. Just as this silver-white sword was about to turn transparent in Long Ruo's eyes. Suddenly, an insignificant thin sword energy exploded out from within the sword body. Long Ruo was slightly shocked, retracting his soul intent. The 3 golden talismans in his soul also retracted the light, flicking out with his right hand, only to hear a light ding as that broken blade sword was tossed hundreds of feet away. It was also restricted by a power such that it didn't fall below the cloud ocean. What a good gold-breaking sword intent in the end, it failed once more. Frowning, Long Ruo looked at his right hand, only to see that at the tip of his finger there was a thin wound. His martial path wasn't as good as spiritual cultivation, and he was only at the martial ancestor realm. However, the strength of his physical body along with his vast soul power wasn't something that normal grade 3 spiritual weapons could injure. However, that sword just now easily left such a wound on his finger. His eyes were filled with worry. He had comprehended this gold-breaking sword intent for 8 months. At the start, he improved by leaps and bounds. However, close to half a year later, he was stuck at this last step. It shouldn't be because of his comprehension of the martial path, but also because of the natural barrier between spirit and martial arts. As expected, the path of a sword cultivator wasn't easy to walk. Just as he was deep in thought, Long Ruo suddenly felt something. He looked below, only to see a person climbing up from below. However, he wasn't stepping on the mountain stone but was walking in the air. It was obvious that he was not familiar with it. His body swayed and his speed was slow. However, every step he took was extremely steady. The 300 feet tall hill was not steep, but this person took nearly 15 minutes to walk step by step to the top of the hill. His eyebrows and forehead were covered in sweat. However, the young man's face was filled with joy and satisfaction. Long Ruo also felt happy for him, laughing lightly. "Congratulations, junior brother Zhu, you are already at the ascended realm. With a lifespan of 1,000 years, they will no longer be on the same level as mortals." When Zhu Renkuang heard this, he laughed out loud. "I have been training in the world for 7 years and have cultivated bitterly in this cloud palace for many years. Now I have finally taken this step. But now that my realm is unstable, who knows, it might fall back again tomorrow." Following which he looked towards the silver spiritual sword in front of Long Ruo. Senior brother is still comprehending this gold fragment sword intent? It seemed like he really had to learn the art of sword cultivation, cultivate a second primordial spirit, and gather the sword intent of the sword embryo. What's the progress now? That's right, I want to cultivate a second primordial spirit. I still have to thank junior brother Zhu for this. To think that you found this broken blade sword for me. Although the progress is small, but within 2 to 3 months I will have some achievement. Long Ruo smiled, casually waving his sleeves and keeping the silver-white spiritual sword. Following which he asked curiously, "Junior brother Zhu didn't come here to ask me about the progress of the gold fragment sword intent. What is the matter? Why not be direct? Our relationship is different, so there is no need to be polite. I really wanted to ask senior brother about your sword intent. There are still 3 months before the Dragon Gate opens and the Martial Saint image appears. Which is why senior master told me to ask senior brother about your progress, whether or not you can break through within 3 months. Zhu Renkuang laughed, following which his tone changed. "There is one more thing to inform senior brother. Did senior brother order a 4th-generation disciple to pay attention to news about the Gantian Mountain Prince Zhongsho? This person wanted me to pass a message to you, saying that 3 days ago. That prince has already killed Zhongshe, Zhongming and Zhonghao, officially ascending to the throne and becoming the 2nd-generation monster king of Gantian Mountain." Long Ruo's eyes constricted, his eyes filled with shock. "You are saying that Zhongshe and Zhongming all died in his hands?" Even if Zhu Renkuang said that Zhongsho inherited the position of Monster King, it wasn't as shocking as the deaths of these few people. A few days ago he had understood Gantian Mountain. He knew that the direct bloodline disciples of the Zhong family had deep roots in Gantian Mountain. Zhongsho wanted to make them give up the position of Monster King to borrow the strength of his subjects. He also had a chance of success, but to wipe out the 3 of them was tough. "I don't know, senior brother, have you heard of Xuemoyan? I heard that he is the most outstanding person in this generation of the Xue family." Seeing Long Ruo's eyes flash, it was obvious that he had heard of this person. Zhu Renkuang didn't introduce him, saying expressionlessly, 3 days ago, this person and Daoming sect Weizhenren, Xuansu sect Lihu Jichang, along with several Xuanwu ancestors and returned to Sun Realm spirit masters all died on the altar of Gantian Mountain. I heard that Zhongsho personally killed them. Even the Sky Fox Zhong family race uncle Zhongzheng also lost to Zhongsho. That's impossible. Long Ruo stood up when he heard that, his eyes filled with shock and bewilderment. How was it possible for a cripple with the barriers of heaven and man to kill Xuemoyan, even if he saw wrongly? 10 months ago Zhongsho had just reached the martial master realm. He definitely couldn't become so strong in a short year. Daoming sect Wei, Xuansu sect Jichang were all top talent. Not to mention the 3 of them, even any Xuanwu ancestor. They could easily use one finger to crush Zhongsho to death. At that time I was also shocked. Even the sect leader sent a talisman to ask about it. Zhu Renkuang wasn't shocked by Long Ruo's loss of composure, smiling slightly as he shook his head. I sent people to investigate and noticed that the people who were there that day didn't speak about it in detail. They were either bragging that the Prince Zong's show was strong and even ascended ancestors weren't his match, or they were unwilling to speak about it. What was more surprising was that there were weird rumors in the market. They said that Zong's show killed 4 grade 6 beasts when he was 8 and forced back the Een serpent in the evil spirit moat when he was 10. There were many other things, forget it, take a look yourself. As he said that, Zhu Renquang directly tossed a jade letter over. Long Rua caught it. Just looking at half of it, a smile appeared on his face. This means that when this prince was 10, he was already an expert of the same grade as us. The Een serpent in the evil spirit moat was the same grade as his grade 7 black flood dragon, formed from evil Een power. Ordinary 7th stage powerhouses would only be courting death in front of him. To be able to force it back, his strength was naturally really strong. However, shortly after, Long Rua's gaze was filled with caution. Looking at the way this kid acted that night, he was indeed decisive and vicious. Building his own race, his methods are really extraordinary. At the start, I underestimated him. Also, after this kid, there must be other experts helping him. He is indeed amazing, so young and already so scheming. When we met in Cloud Saint City, I saw some clues. Unfortunately, he has barriers from heaven and is unable to cultivate. Zhu Renquang shook his head and sighed, feeling a little regretful. Following which he thought about it. As for the expert behind this kid, that day after the heaven-worshipping altar, there was something really weird. Be it Yunxia Mountain, Blazing Flame Mountain, or the Shui family, Daoming sect, Xuansu sect. The news they obtained were all rumors that happened not long after in Gantian Mountain City. Not a single power knew what was going on at the heaven sacrificial altar. It was like the spies they placed in Gantian Mountain City were all pulled out by someone. I am guessing that the person behind Zong's show is not only strong but also able to suppress that Zongzheng. His own strength must be really strong. Who knows, he might have acted for that Een Dragon Canyon item. As for this Zong show, he might have some strength. However, the deaths of Shui Moyan and the others probably had nothing to do with him. Those rumors were mostly just to cover up the truth. Speaking of which, senior brother, our sect decided to not care about this Een Dragon Canyon? Long Rua couldn't help but slightly nod his head. What Zhu Renquang said was the same as what he had guessed. When he heard the latter part, he smiled. Why would we not care? The thing's in our own territory, no matter how those few sects make a ruckus. In the end, our Lingyun sect would have a share of the profit. Why jump out at such a time and become the target of all the sects? Let's wait until the Dragon Gathering Mountain Dragon sect matter is settled. If we can see the Martial Saint's image, we will definitely be able to improve. Martial Saint image? This time I might not be able to get a spot to directly enter the inner sect. I might not be able to see it. Zhu Renquang touched his nose, revealing a bitter smile. He stood up and was about to say goodbye when he suddenly thought about something. Oh right. Senior Brother Long, I heard that you recently had some relationship with mysterious cloud spirit sex Han Nishui. Recently this person was said to be in a bad state because of the marriage matter. His situation is worrying. Originally this person wanted to borrow the strength of mysterious cloud spirit sect and pill fountain sect to pressure Xian Mountain City. However, I heard that 2 days ago that Xian Mountain City Lord Xian Yuan Tong broke through to the Ascended Realm. I heard that there are 2 large sects that want to recruit this person. Long Rua couldn't help but be startled, following which his expression sunk once more. The matter that they had agreed on actually had such a change. All of a sudden he was distracted, unable to calm down even after he sent Long Rua away. That unharmonious feeling in his heart was getting thicker and thicker. His heart was vexed, unable to calm down for a long time. It was this Zong show again, feeling more and more that this person's matter was out of his control. Even if he placed that broken blade sword in front of him once more, he was unable to calm his heart down to comprehend it. Speaking of which, this broken blade sword in front of him was originally obtained by the Gantian mountain prince, making him annoyed and annoyed. Chapter 266. Pretty much at the same time, in the Chongzhen Hall of Gantian Mountain City. The aura was unusually solemn. Hu Zhongyuan stood behind the people, at a position close to the middle. His expression was respectful, his eyes looking straight ahead. However, he felt that the atmosphere today was getting more and more wrong. He could faintly feel a sharp, blade-like gaze from above, occasionally sweeping over, causing him to feel a bone-piercing chill. However, when he looked carefully, he didn't see anything weird. Only Zhong Shou was sitting on the throne. He had just turned 14, and his slightly thin and small body was extremely comical in that wide chair. However, his face was tight. Thinking back to 3 days ago, the prince's decisiveness to kill, his cruel methods made one unable to laugh. Since the ruler insists on including the loss of these war machines into the national treasury account, then I have nothing to say. The one who spoke was Renbua in Zhong Shaoxin's eyes. He was around 40 years old, wearing a scholar's crown and a white robe. Gantian Mountain City didn't have an official system and also didn't have a unified government office. Hence, the various cities in the hall didn't have a uniform and wore all sorts of things. At this moment, the white-robed Prime Minister's brows rose up, saying coldly, "I just want to remind your Majesty, our Gantian Mountain City hasn't gone down the cloud ocean to hunt for beasts for many months. If we have additional expenses, we won't have the capital to organize the next cloud ocean hunt." Zhong Shou sat on the throne, slightly shocked. He forgot about this matter. Gantian Mountain City's normal taxes and various income. It didn't even take up half of the national treasury income. The true bulk was under the cloud ocean. Gantian Mountain City had no ruler for many months. Naturally, they could only stop the cloud ocean hunt. After he took over as ruler, what these subjects looked forward to the most was this matter. It was also the most important thing for Gantian Mountain City. Then, he didn't care, waving his hand to signal Renbua, who was obviously cold to him, to back down. Then, he made a hand signal to Chu Shui beside him. Chu Shui hesitated for a moment. After a while, she took a few scrolls and stood in front of the throne. She coughed lightly and said, "Everyone, His Majesty has announced a few edicts. Please listen carefully." Everyone in the hall had solemn expressions when they heard this. They lowered their heads and listened quietly. Even a newly appointed official would have 3 fires of fire, let alone this young demon king who had hidden his strength and methods, who had suppressed all the forces in the city as soon as he was appointed. This was also Zhong Shou's first decree after he succeeded the throne. How could anyone dare to be careless and disrespectful? Seeing this, Chu Shui's heart calmed down a little. She calmed down and read out the words on the bright yellow imperial edict. 2 days ago, I ordered Hu Zhongyuan to secretly investigate various places in the city. Investigating Shirley Ling Xiangting is an offense to public morals and corrupt customs. After a long time, it will inevitably become an offense to public morals. Especially inside the quiet cloud pavilion, men and women were all lewd and lascivious. Lewdness was declared in public, and it was unbearably filthy. After I heard the report, I was furious. This evil wind can't continue to grow. I ordered the Left Pillar General to seal up Shirley Ling Xiangting, as well as all the brothels in Gantian Mountain City. From today onwards, after 7 p.m., Gantian Mountain City will have a curfew. When she read that, Chu Shui was enlightened. The prince's revenge came just like that. Moreover, he used his position to take revenge for private matters, so righteous and cunning. However, sealing up the brothels was a good thing. Hu Zhongyuan below was totally stunned. When did he receive orders from Zhong Shou to investigate the various places in the city? He didn't say anything that offended public morals or corrupted morals. Although this quiet cloud pavilion was a brothel, the girls within didn't sell their bodies. What lewd and lascivious, what lewdness in public, it had nothing to do with that. The ministers in the hall also fell silent for a moment. Huchencho's face was dark and uncertain as he stared viciously at his son. The other people all had weird expressions on their faces. They weren't righteous people, who hadn't been to this Shirley Ling Xiangting before. They all had one or two people they were close to there. They did offend public morals, but it wasn't much. They really didn't understand why Zhong Shou treated this matter so seriously and even made it the first decree after he took over. They exchanged glances with one another. Ren Bo stepped out. Ruler, the taxes from Shirley Ling Xiangting is enough to support 3 town armies. Actually, they are all pitiful girls who don't have a livelihood. If the ruler thinks that they offend public morals, you can increase the taxes. Moreover, it isn't wartime, so I don't think there's a need for this curfew. Zhong Shou's lips curled up, following which he picked up 3 pieces of paper from his table. One wrote "too busy at night," one wrote "population," and one wrote "war wind." He then made some gestures towards Chu Shui. Chu Shui looked at it for a long while before she understood. She spoke with a weird expression. The ruler said that it is too busy at night and it isn't a good thing for our Gantian mountain city. Which is why we need a curfew to let the young people go home and give birth. Our Gantian mountain monster race relies on our people to be simple and warlike and have high martial ability. We don't need those small amounts of money that we earn from the flesh business. It is better to increase the population and maintain the prosperity of the races. She was shocked. So the young master wasn't taking revenge for private matters, but was openly giving out a proper decree? Last night he really went to inspect the people? The atmosphere in the imperial court was really solemn. Everyone in the imperial court was visibly moved. Especially the various race leaders whose eyes were all filled with weird expressions. Their gazes towards Zhong Shou were filled with respect. Why didn't they think of such a simple theory? Was that right? Those kids at home would become wilder and wilder at night. They had to rush them back to train or accompany their wives and give birth to kids to strengthen the race. It was better for the night to be more monotonous. A curfew was a good idea. Even Ren Bo had a weird look on his face, smiling as he bowed. Ruler is wise, I was wrong. Chu Shui opened the second scroll and read, I have checked on the population growth of Gantian Mountain. Starting from 2 years ago, it was less than 5%. Which is why I ordered that all adult couples in Gantian Mountain City who can give birth to an extra child will be rewarded with a Grade 2 beast crystal. Those who have more than 3 children, those who lack money can apply for Gantian Mountain City to provide for them. The entire hall was in an uproar once more. Everyone's faces were filled with surprise. Giving birth to more children and they would actually get money. If they gave birth to more sons, the city lord could raise them for them. This was different from before. Those who had the right to roam at night and not return were all nobles and rich kids. Zhong Shou's second decree was targeted at all the commoners of Gantian Mountain. One could imagine that the prosperous days of the race were right in front of their eyes, so how could they not be happy? Renbo was startled. If it was really as the decree said, then the expenditure would be huge. Following which his eyes were filled with determination. This was a good thing for Gantian Mountain City. Even if he gritted his teeth and tightened his belt, he had to forcefully take it. He still bowed, yes, ruler. The prince is talented and strategic, better than the previous ruler. His tone didn't have the coldness from before. In the entire hall, not a single person revealed a disapproving expression. Just these 2 decrees were enough to win the hearts of the people. The ruler's strategic plan could be seen from just one spot. Chu Shui was also filled with respect and worship. Her young master was the best. He opened the third scroll. I studied in Linhai College for 3 years. I know the hardships of commoner martial artists. To find a high-grade martial art or spiritual cultivation technique, they have to work hard. If Zhong Yuan could learn high-grade martial arts early on, how could he only be a martial ancestor? Which is why from today on, I will open up the book hiding pavilion left by my father. There are a total of 5 layers of books within. All Gantian Mountain Zhong family disciples can take 5 books from the first layer before they reach adulthood. The other Gantian Mountain tribes and the human race can take 4. The second and third layers have thousands of secret manuals that can be exchanged for with merit points. Hu Qianxiu's eyes constricted, clenching his fists as he raised his head and looked at Zhong Shou. The people in the hall were in an uproar once more. Everyone was either shocked or shocked. Some were uneasy. Within the cloud world, pretty much all powers had many spiritual cultivation and martial arts books. However, these resources were all kept a secret. In a chaotic world, the strong were respected. Only by being strong and having a bigger fist could one rule others. However, if it was those commoner martial artists, they could learn deep martial arts and have a chance to reach the peak of the martial path. Then, how would the aristocratic families of the various cities have the strength to rule them? Zhong Shou was the first to set a precedent, not caring at all and only adding merit points to exchange for this condition. Hu Qianxiu didn't know what would happen in the future. He only knew that in a short time, Gantian Mountain's strength would greatly increase and their military strength would double. Moreover, the more time passed, the more strength they could accumulate. As long as Zhong Shou could suppress and control them. Was he really a talent? Such a thought flashed in his heart. Hu Qianxiu exchanged glances with Chai Yuan, only to see that his eyes were also shining brightly. As for that Ling Xian, his body shuddered, his face filled with disbelief. On the other side, Chu Shui didn't wait for everyone to come back to their senses, following which she read out the 4th decree. Be it cultivating martial arts or spiritual cultivation, you need mind stones, beast crystals, pills and spiritual artifacts to help. I know the hardships of the commoners. Many martial artists and spirit masters have given up because of this. I deeply regret it. From today on, any Gantian Mountain citizens, as long as someone is a guarantor, they can borrow from the City Lord Manor to buy to break through. Any army disciples don't need to be a guarantor, interest-free. Another bomb was thrown into this Chongzhen Hall. Hu Qianxiu only felt his heart was in a daze. Before this, he was worried about Zhong Shou and was good at administrative matters. At this moment, he noticed that he had underestimated the ability of the ruler. The 4 decrees were all connected to one another. Between them there was a connection. It was even more ambitious. The first 2 could increase the population, benefiting the future. The last 2 could cause Gantian Mountain City to have millions more soldiers. Some low-grade cultivators could even try to climb towards high-grade. In the future, 70% of these people would be grateful to Zhong Shou. Especially in the Gantian army, they would be even more loyal. Although it touched the interests of many nobles in the city, their Hu family would suffer a lot in the short term. However, with Zhong Shou's strength, no one would dare to jump out to oppose. Pretty much everyone looked towards Chu Shui once more. In Chu Shui's hands there were a total of 7 scrolls, 7 decrees. The first 4 were already surprising, the last 3 naturally made them look forward to it. Chapter 267. As expected, following which Chu Shui continued to read. A few days ago I made a vow on the Temple of Heaven. I will let my Gantian Mountain Zhong family have someone to rely on. However, Gantian Mountain City is made up of my people, and I can't bear to be biased. Today, I will set up a bank to provide for all the old people, all the widows, all the handicapped. Hu Qianxiu and the others instantly frowned. Along with the previous few, this wasn't a small amount. Zhong Shou's intention in this decree was good. There were many people in Gantian Mountain who were either handicapped or had their children die on the battlefield. Even Xiantian experts, if they were unable to improve on the martial path, when they reached a certain age, their strength would weaken, resulting in them being really pitiful in their later years. However, the money to provide for the old and handicapped, along with the previous 4 government decrees, Gantian Mountain's yearly expenditure wasn't enough. Just as he was thinking that the prince was still too young and wasn't familiar with administrative matters, his thoughts were too simple. He heard Chu Shui start to explain. After a short while, he slowly understood. Zhong Shou's meaning was that everyone in the city who could provide for themselves could be willing to deposit some money into the bank, no matter how much or how little. When they reached a certain age or were handicapped, they would be able to receive a certain amount of gold and silver every month to provide for their living need. Everything was voluntary and not forced. Based on what Zhong Shou said, this was called retirement and handicap insurance. All the people in the army didn't need to fork out their own money, the city lord manor would pay for it. The eyes of the people in the hall lit up. Originally, they thought that Zhong Shou was going to raise taxes in the city. Only then did they relax, following which they thought about the deeper meaning within, feeling more and more that this method was not only ingenious but also feasible. All of a sudden, their thoughts were in a mess. Some of them were muttering and calculating, their eyes filled with a weird light. Including Chiu Wei and all the generals in the army, their faces flushed red. Their faces flushed red and they were eager to try. They really wanted Zhong Shou's plan. It was best to implement it immediately. However, the inside of the hall was strangely quiet. No one spoke. They all looked at the top 10 officials with anticipation in their eyes. This was especially true for the middle-aged man in his 40s, who was wearing a white robe and a scholar's crown. Renbo closed his eyes and pondered. A moment later, he had made up his mind. Only then did he take a deep breath and say, "That day on the heaven-worshipping altar, the crown prince swore that within the Clear Sky sect, there was no distinction between direct and concubine, only talent. There was no difference in the level of one's bloodline. I want my clansmen to have support for the old and support for the young. I want them to not have to worry about food and clothing. Today, with these 5 decrees, it was enough to fulfill half of the oath that day. Not only the 800,000 people of the Zhong family, but also the people of Gantian Mountain. This is also a strategy to strengthen the country, allowing Gantian Mountain City's military power to dominate the Cloud Continent in a few years. He had originally thought the most highly of Zhong Shi. This kid was good at both martial and civil matters. When he was working under Zhong Weiran, he was always flawless. He personally watched him slowly grow up. In the end, 3 days ago, Zhong Shou appeared out of nowhere and suddenly rose up. He was really strong and wiped out Zhong Shi and the others. Even at that time, he knew that he was the son of his benefactor. In terms of the Confucians, he was the true heir. In his heart, he was still worried that this 14-year-old ruler didn't know how to do things. Not only did he destroy Gantian Mountain, but he also destroyed his life's ambitions. However, at this moment, he felt really fortunate. Even if the ruler's 5 strategies were too extreme in his eyes, he didn't consider the details. However, just based on that, he knew that Zhong Shou had a lot of talents hidden in his chest. Magnanimous and ambitious. The previous ruler was a tiger father, so how could the ruler be a dog son? Not only wasn't he, but he was even better. No matter how good that Zhong Shi was, he was just a guard dog, a ruler. How could he compare to the ruler? Today, with just 2 or 3 of these 5 decrees, he could be called a wise ruler. However, shortly after, Renbo's tone turned serious. The ruler's strategy is indeed good. However, Gantian Mountain City has limited finances. Loaning money to support the soldiers will only take a few years, and we can use the daily interest to maintain it. As for the old bank, we can use various methods to increase their value. Gantian Mountain City can also subsidize money every year. However, both of these needs start in gold. Zhong Shou smiled. picking up a piece of paper. On it, he had already written, "This money can be borrowed from me, 2,000 grade 7 beast crystals. In the future, Gantian Mountain City will repay it in installments." Liluo and Shurdan, who were sitting in the corner and watching, exchanged glances with one another, thinking that the ruler really spent a lot this time, really willing to give up. Using the ruler's treasury to pay for it? Renbo was obviously startled. He couldn't figure out Jun Shang's temperament. Before this, for that small amount of money, he argued with him and didn't give in at all. However, the moment he opened his mouth, he took out 2,000 grade 7 beast crystals. He looked at the bottom of the paper. There were a few fly-sized, unassuming words, 20% annual interest. He couldn't help but nod his head slightly. Renbo understood that this person wasn't willing to take a loss at all. That can be done. However, 2,000 grade 7 beast crystals is too much. My Gantian Mountain City can squeeze for a few years, and just 500 is enough. However, did the Crown Prince ever consider the people who were working for him? If this sum of money isn't supervised, in 3 to 5 years it will be swallowed up. How can we ensure that it is fair and that no one is biased? Although there are city patrolling imperial messengers within Gantian Mountain City, I don't have high hopes for them. Furthermore, how can we ensure that the city lord won't take these two sums of money for other uses? Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, finally revealing a shocked expression. For this Renbo to be appointed prime minister by Zhong Weiran, he really did have some ability. His words directly hit the nail on the head. He also felt slightly regretful. The more money one lent, the more interest one would earn. This old man was just too smart. He still picked up a piece of paper from the table. Everyone focused on it, but it was a question. I heard that Gantian Mountain City had a race leader meeting system? Hu Qianxia was confused, but he still patiently replied, there was. In the past, the ruler convinced the various races to listen to his orders and gather under Gantian Mountain. At that time, the ruler wasn't famous, which was why the various races discussed and decided on our city plan. In the end, it was abolished. Zhong Shouxin smiled. Zhong Weiran won every battle on the battlefield. He was truly ambitious. In just a year, he convinced the various races to listen to his orders. Hence, he rose up in the west of the Cloud Continent and was on the same level as Yunxia and Blazing Flame. As a result, the clan leader system was naturally abolished. Anyways, no matter how they discussed, they couldn't compare to Zhong Weiran's decisiveness. Why not just directly listen to his orders? He waved his hand towards Chu Shui to let this brat open the 6th decree. From today onwards, we will rebuild the race meeting system to supervise the implementation of this policy. The monster races can choose one out of every 200,000 people to participate. They will be called elders. Every 5 years, they can get a salary from the city lord manor. If there are less than 200,000 people, they will automatically have an elder position. The humans in the city can also choose to participate. They can split the regions and vote. Similarly, every 200,000 people will increase by 1. On Gantian Mountain, build a Taigang stone hall for the various races to discuss. The people in the hall were all confused. They didn't care about this matter. Those 2 huge sums of money, it was good that there were people supervising it. However, this was too much of a fuss. Also, that Taigang stone hall was not bad. Although it consumed a lot, it could help people break through to the Ascended Realm and comprehend the martial path. The people in Gantian Mountain City had envied Xian Mountain City for a long time. To use it as a meeting place for these elders, wasn't it a little too extravagant and wasteful? Even Renbo was also baffled. However, after thinking about it, he didn't say anything more. This method could block up most of the loopholes. At least the interests of the various races in the city could be taken care of. With these people, they could also supervise Zhong Shou's few decrees and money. Naturally, he could perfect some of the details. If the ruler had to complete everything, then what was the use of them as subjects? Thinking about it carefully and making sure he didn't miss out anything, Renbo bowed. Ruler is wise, this method is great. Seeing Renbo acknowledge it, Hu Qianxiu, Chai Yuan and the others all bowed. It was okay for them to fight and kill. Their scheming on the battlefield was no weaker than others. However, in terms of governance, even if they tied their heads together, they still couldn't compare to Renbo. Since the Prime Minister acknowledged it, then Zhong Shou's few decrees would definitely work. They could hear that Zhong Shou's decrees were great. It was something no one had ever thought of and something no one had ever thought of. There was no precedent in the cloud world. However, whether or not it could be smoothly realized still needed Renbo to judge. Zhong Shou was slightly annoyed when he saw that. These were all policies that the future generations had tried out and tested. After he took them out, these people actually didn't immediately bow down and worship him, singing praises and praising him. They were actually hesitating. They really didn't have foresight and were petty. However, this Renbo's reputation within Gantian Mountain City was much higher than he expected. On the other side, Chu Shui had already opened the seventh decree, reading out, as the previous Right Pillar General Zhong Xiuan has been removed, this position can't be left empty. Zhong Gang, the commander of the Xuanwu Iron Cavalry, will temporarily take over the position of the Right Pillar General. There is also Zhong Yuan, who led 3,000 Iron Cavalry to destroy 40,000 troops of Yunxia and Blazing Flame City. This merit has to be rewarded. From today onwards, he will take control of the Black Fox Iron Cavalry and also lead the guards. These two appointments were not out of everyone's expectations. A new ruler naturally had to take control of the military. Although Zhong Gang wasn't good at strategy, he had this person to replace Zhong Xiuan. The 20% of Gantian Mountain City that was led by the Right Pillar General would return to the control of Zhong Shou and the Gantian Mountain Zhong family. This was the proper meaning of the question, and it was also a matter of course. As for Zhong Yuan's position, it was expected by everyone. Such an unparalleled general talent, and also a loyal subordinate. If Zhong Shou didn't put him in an important position, then his brain would be kicked by a donkey. Chapter 268. In the Chongjing Hall, they spent another 4 hours discussing the details of these decrees, as well as many miscellaneous matters. Only then did they begin to disperse in satisfaction. However, just as they were leaving, Zhong Shou signaled towards Chiu Wei. He pointed towards Hu Zhongyuan and then blinked his eyes. Using his hand as a knife, he sliced his neck. Chiu Wei pondered for a moment before coming to a realization. He bowed and said, "I understand. As for sealing down Shirley Ling Xiangding, I will order Hu Zhongyuan to take charge. If he dares to bend the law, I Chiu Wei will marry him." His voice was really loud, like a huge bell. Everyone within the hall heard it. Hu Qianxiu's expression was weird, who knew whether he was happy or worried. As for Hu Zhongyuan, he had a long face. He didn't know how he had offended this little ancestor. If the matter today was spread out, his original circle of rich kids would see him as an enemy and he wouldn't be able to survive. As for his good reputation in Shirley Ling Xiangding, it would stain the streets and everyone would want to beat him up. Zhong Shou's lips curled into a smile. This was just the start. The true method to deal with this fellow was still to come. Until he walked out of the back door of the Chongjing Hall, Zhong Shou's body gave off a cold aura, extremely dark and sinister, occasionally laughing coldly. Chu Shui couldn't help but shiver. She thought to herself that it was best not to provoke such a narrow-minded person like her young master. Within the warm reading room, there were still huge amounts of official matters and memorials piled up. However, today Zhong Shou was too lazy to bother. He saw clearly that anyways, no matter big or small, Renbo would take care of it for him. Even if he didn't bother, this Gantian mountain city wouldn't fall just like that. He walked directly to the martial arts training room. Because of those complicated administrative matters, he wasted 2 days of time. Today he could finally take a look at his progress. This martial arts training room that Zhong Weiran used was extremely luxurious. Just the surface area alone was 1,000 feet wide. There were sandbags, wooden dummies, rock-like weights, 18 different weapons, and so on. Zhong Shou walked in front of a wooden man, only to see that this thing not only used grade 7 and above spiritual wood, but it was also wrapped in layers of grade 7 beast hides. It could reduce the damage to the wooden man to a minimum. In addition, there was also a spiritual array that could sense one's strength, allowing one to accurately estimate one's own strength. Silently exclaiming at Zhong Weiran's extravagance, Zhong Shou directly punched out, only to hear a pung sound like he was defeated. The wooden golem didn't even sway in the slightest. Only a yellow spiritual light flashed from its exterior. That strength-counting spiritual formation had a total of 9 colors. Using the color to differentiate the level, and then using the depth of the color to determine the strength of the power. Dark yellow with a hint of red. His current strength should be around 100,000 jin, just slightly more than the pinnacle of Xiantian realm. Also, the true qi in the body has gathered by quite a bit. Samuraim's eyes instantly lit up with joy. He didn't expect that he would obtain such a huge benefit from completing the wishes of the previous Zhong Shou. He had actually merged close to 30% of the Lightning Phoenix essence in one go. If this went on in less than a year, he would be able to totally absorb it. Coincidentally, that world-shocking spiritual art, he had more or less deduced the second meridian cultivation method of the Earth Chakra level. Although it wasn't completed, it could be used. Without hesitation, Zhong Shou took out a spirit-absorbing pagoda. However, this time it wasn't the cheap item that he snatched from the hands of the Demon Flag sect disciple in the underground river. It was one of the Spirit Master artifacts that Zhong Weiran left for him. It was 6 layers tall, a purple-gold color. Other people just needed to take a look, and they would know that this was an extremely high-grade item. It was indeed so. Not only was it able to absorb 1 more spiritual vein than normal grade 6 spirit-absorbing pagoda, but it was also able to help spirit masters. It could also help spirit masters search for those spiritual veins. Its suction strength was also grade 7. Within the pagoda, Zhong Shou had raised several 5-element spiritual veins and strengthened them. At this moment, he didn't need to make any other preparations, just sitting down cross-legged. With a thought, he absorbed the 2 5-element spiritual veins into his body and raised them within his internal meridians. At the start, it was a little unstable, clashing with the 2 earth veins within the external meridians. His skin started to tear. His meridians swelled like they were about to burst. Following which, Zhong Shou used his true qi to forcefully suppress it. He also adjusted it before it slowly calmed down. Then, he could feel the 6 organs in his body: gallbladder, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, bladder, and trigeo. They were all growing stronger at a speed that could be clearly felt. The spiritual energy gathered in his body flowed endlessly, like it couldn't be used up. Even if it was used up, it could continue to be produced. Zhong Shou adjusted his breathing for a moment until the 4 earth veins in his body were totally stable and didn't clash with one another. Only then did he stand up, directly punching the body of the wooden puppet beside him. In an instant, the 4 spiritual veins were twisted into one. All the strength was used at the tip of the fist. The yellow color of the spiritual light emitted by the wooden golem had completely disappeared and turned into a red color. Light red, but the color is really light. Its strength should be around 200,000 kilograms. Based on my experience, it should be 190,000 kilograms. I only merged with 2 spiritual veins. Normal peak Xiantian experts had around 45,000 kilograms of strength. If one broke through and merged with another spiritual vein, their strength would instantly increase by 3 times to 150,000 kilograms. Now, he could barely go up against martial ancestors with just his 2 meridians. This was also under the situation where he didn't use sword intent to make his true chi more condensed. However, this was the end of their progress. Thinking back to how he had the lightning phoenix essence and the strong martial path of his last life, but he couldn't use it, Zhong Shou couldn't help but sigh at his tough life. Luckily, his spiritual cultivation realm wasn't restricted, and he could use it to improve himself. Thinking about that, he stopped. Zhong Shou was first fully focused, practicing the 4th set of energy-leading techniques in the training field. Following which, he practiced those body training techniques: Foundation Breathing Spiritual Fist, Great Blazing Sun Fist, Little 5-Wheel Enlightened King Fist, and Rhino Spirit Armor Fist 10 times. Lastly, he practiced the basic sword techniques a full 20 times. The entire process was neither arrogant nor rash. He was really focused. By the time he finished all the homework, 4 hours had already passed. Zhong Shou's body was drenched in sweat. In the past, during the journey, it was inconvenient to practice on the carriage, and he couldn't use it, which was why Zhong Shou spent most of his time on spiritual cultivation. Now that he returned to Gantian Mountain and finally settled down, he naturally had to make up for all the homework. Even though his spiritual cultivation realm was far above the martial path. However, in Zhong Shaoxin's eyes, he still placed the sword path that he pursued in his last life as the top priority. He completed all the basic techniques of the martial path one by one. Zhong Shou practiced a spell as well as the techniques he thought of to deal with his hoarseness. Then, he heard the entire Hanyan Palace suddenly burst out in cheers. Zhong Shou was startled. Walking out of the training field, he saw the faces of the guards all flushed red with excitement. Their eyes were filled with gratitude as they looked over. Listening in, it was all discussions about the book-hiding pavilion and buying pills. Zhong Shou was delighted, thinking that he could already invest in weapon and pill shop. Taking loans from him, naturally they had to buy from the shops he chose. Not only could he earn money, but he could also rely on these 2 businesses to earn money. He could also develop some outstanding pill refiners and blacksmiths before the spiritual wave started, killing many birds with 1 stone. He was too smart. What should he do? Even he himself was very impressed with himself. If this went on, wouldn't he be too narcissistic? Turning his head, he saw Chu Shui at the side of the cliff staring down. Zhong Shou walked over and similarly looked down. He saw that the city was decorated with lanterns and banners, tens of thousands of feet away. Zhong Shou could still hear the sounds of firecrackers from below, looking really happy. Looking closely, he saw that a small portion of the girls on the streets were smiling, their faces filled with joy. When Chu Shui saw him walk over, she instantly giggled. "Young master, that quiet cloud pavilion is in such a bad state. Young master, your idea is the best. Taking revenge for your personal grievances in a proper manner." Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, looking towards the direction of Shirley Ling Xiangding, only to see that there were tens of thousands of troops there. One could vaguely see that Hu Zhongyuan was clad in metal armor, leading a group of soldiers, and had already begun to clear the area. As for the quiet cloud pavilion, it was currently surrounded by over 1,000 women. They seemed to be arguing emotionally, who knows what they were saying. Zhong Shou's lips instantly curled up, but he quickly stopped himself. He knocked on Chu Shui's head, following which he wrote a few words in the air, gathering spiritual energy and directly forming it in the air. Nonsense. I am the lord of a city, why would I bother with some girls? Chu Shui rolled her eyes, thinking to herself that young master should just continue acting. Following which her brows furrowed, her eyes filled with pity. Young master, these girls are really pitiful. Zhong Shou kept silent when he heard that, following which he smiled coldly and turned around. Similarly, a few words formed in the air. A family crying is better than a city crying. Let's talk about it in 2 days. He directly turned around and walked back to the training grounds tiredly. Gathering spiritual energy to form words in the air was a method that he had just figured out. Although he could act cool, as he wasn't very familiar with it, the consumption of soul power was much greater than that of spells. Along with the practice from before, his soul power was almost all used up. Chu Shui heaved a sigh of relief. She knew that with Zhong Shou's personality, since he said that, then he definitely wouldn't kill all of them. In the wide field, Zhong Shou lit up a few red sandalwood incense and entered meditation. After the luck word, he formed 2 talismans, one was the swallow word and the other was the purify word. The former had the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique in his hands. In the last life, Zhong Shou had studied this scripture for many years. As long as he did some research, he would be able to roughly grasp it. As for the purify word, Zhong Shou also had some ideas about it. The thing that could give him the most inspiration was little gold on his arm. Chapter 269. After all, it was a complete merger of the soul. That day on the altar, although his soul ocean only expanded by 30%. However, the quality of his soul power had increased by close to double, no weaker than the return to Sun Realm. The benefits weren't only that. At this moment, when Zhong Shou was focused on cultivating and expanding his soul ocean, his cultivation speed was close to 2 times that of before. In the past, he used 3 days to increase his soul power, but now he only needed 1 day to complete it. This made Zhong Shou delighted. He started to seriously consider the second wish of Zhong Shou, Zhong Weiran, who was currently hiding in the Oblivion Cloud Ocean. Towards this future maniac blood monster saint, 9-tailed Fox King, Zhong Shou's feelings were really complicated. He respected him but also felt fear and disdain. In his heart, he subconsciously wasn't willing to meet this person so early. After all, he had taken over the body of his only son. Thinking about it, he knew what kind of attitude Zhong Weiran would have towards him. However, Zhong Shou's last wish was to save Zhong Weiran from the Oblivion Cloud Ocean. How problematic! Forget it, let's not bother about this matter. Who knows, maybe Zhong Weiran is cultivating under the Oblivion Cloud Ocean, living a leisurely life. I have already merged with this body. I am just burning the bridge after crossing it. What can this kid who has already kicked the bucket do to me? Following which his brows furrowed. Zhong Shoxin's heart was totally cold. Before he left, he said something about you are me, I am you. What did that mean? He felt more and more that this matter was extremely crucial. Concerned the Book of Ian Extreme Life, the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique, and even why he was able to come to this era from 10,000 years in the future. Zhong Shou took in a deep breath, forcefully suppressing all these thoughts. He started to form true charms one by one. Relying on the potential that exploded out 2 days ago, pretty much all the charms related to the swallow word were extremely smooth. Only that purify word was progressing slowly. Zhong Shou sat in this training field for a full 4 hours. By the time his potential was exhausted, he had only managed to condense 6 devour word true talismans, but not a single purify character. In the end, he gave up and Zhong Shou opened his eyes. He stroked little gold, which had turned into a thin film, and fell into deep thought. If he wanted to comprehend the profound mysteries of this true talisman, this little guy was his only hope. However, at this moment, the divine ability did not appear. He was also unable to comprehend too much from it. In that case, the only way was to raise its grade. Only when he broke through to the 5th stage would he be able to take a peek at the entirety of this divine ability. However, although he was rich and had already taken control of Gantian Mountain City, his resources were abundant. Pills such as the Earth Limit pill could be easily obtained with ease. However, he didn't want to ruin this little fellow's future because of this. From the looks of it, he could only rely on his own comprehension. Zhong Shou smiled and took out a bronze mirror. It was the illusory heart mirror. He was excited. Spirit artifacts and the like could be used without any sacrificial refining. This illusory heart mirror was a little special and needed the Sky Fox bloodline. The reason why Zhong Shou knew about this item was because this illusory heart mirror was extremely famous during the early stages of the God Emperor game. Especially in Donglin Cloud Continent. There was someone who obtained this treasure early on and then went around killing people. Anyone he didn't like would be killed with a mirror. Until Zhong Shou obtained the Book of Ian Extreme Life. This person still didn't fall. He was still as arrogant as before. His spiritual cultivation was strong. His strength was only a little weaker than the 7 emperors and a few peak spirit masters. Zhong Shou had tested the martial path with a good friend of this person in the early years. Hence, he knew the reason why this person had such shocking achievements in the spiritual cultivation path despite his average talent. The key was that the usage of this mirror was totally different from the 7-tail Shui family that crafted this item. The surface of this mirror was smooth and could be compared to the Mingguang mirror, maybe even better. Zhong Shou raised it up and not long later he flew out of the window. It was the middle of the night, the middle of the moon. It was pretty much a full moon shining this illusory heart mirror into this wide room. When Zhong Shou's soul came out from the aperture at his brow, it was exposed to the moonlight. All of a sudden, numerous smoke rose up. The sun-true flame attracted by the illusory heart mirror burned his soul. Zhong Shou didn't find it tough. At this moment, his soul power was 10 times stronger than when he had just entered the night-wandering realm. It was also close to 10 times purer. Even if it was a full moon, the damage it could do to him was small and he didn't care about it at all. What was really tough to deal with was the heavy illusions caused by the light of the illusory heart mirror. The stronger the moonlight, the heavier the illusions. They were all weaknesses left in his soul. Sadness, joy, and rage all rose up in his mind. Just as the night slowly faded and the first bit of sunlight shone down through the round bronze mirror, it reflected into the cultivation room and shone into Zhong Shou's soul. The illusions in Zhong Shou's mind instantly changed. A 30-year-old middle-aged man appeared, handsome and tall. His aura was like a pillar that could support heaven and earth. A pair of phoenix eyes looked down coldly. "Who are you? How audacious! Why do you want to occupy my son's body? Where is my son now?" Zhong Shou's chest felt stuffy, only feeling both ashamed and terrified. Seeing the other party's gaze turn cold, he threw out an indefinite spirit emperor fist from afar. Zhong Shou opened his eyes and similarly punched out. He was magnanimous, the possession matter wasn't up to him. He didn't feel guilty at all. Why did he need to fear this Zhong Weiran? Hong! With an explosion, the illusions in Zhong Shou's mind all disappeared. He felt that the inside of his soul was filled with flames and there was a burst of burning pain. The sunlight in the morning was getting stronger and stronger. Even after the illusionary heart mirror reflected it once, it was 10 times stronger than in the moonlight. Under the shine of the sunlight, Zhong Shou couldn't hold on for more than a moment before his entire soul started to burn. However, he didn't panic with a thought. A layer of purple lightning covered his body, blocking off the sunlight. Following which, the illusionary heart mirror also moved away. With a twirl, it went back into the room and returned to his side. When Zhong Shou opened his eyes, he only felt an intense pain in his brain. This was the price his soul had to pay for forcefully taking the burning of the sun-true flame. The soul power and spiritual energy within his soul ocean whirlpool had already decreased by 5%. However, overall, Zhong Shou's strength didn't decrease. Instead, in that short moment it increased by a large amount. Is this the soul power of the return to Sun Realm? Just now, when he was meditating, he felt that his soul ocean wasn't just cold and een, but also had some yang energy. There was a warm feeling that he had never felt before. Normally speaking, for a spirit master to reach this step, it was when one's soul power was accumulated to the extreme, from yin to yang. To break through to this realm, no matter how much of a genius one was, one would need a few years of accumulation and purification. Today he used the illusionary heart mirror to easily cross over. Although the total amount of soul power decreased, if he cultivated with this method in the future, he could directly turn his soul into yang. The newly formed soul power would also have yang energy, not needing to spend effort to convert it, saving a lot of effort. He could also clearly feel that his soul's control of heaven and earth's spiritual energy had increased by a lot. He wasn't as afraid of sunlight as before. The conflict with the true qi in his dantian and chakra meridians was also greatly reduced. Zhong-Shou observed his soul ocean and couldn't help but laugh. This was the secret of the spiritual cultivation expert in the last life. He relied on this item to raise his heart realm while turning his soul from yin to yang. However, that was after all in the game. Even if it was said to be 99% realistic, it was unable to fully display the ability of the spiritual artifact and couldn't be used in reality. The so-called raising of the heart realm was just a pile of data. The soul turning to yang was the same. It was of no help to the cultivation of that spirit master in reality. Zhong-Shou didn't expect that he would obtain this item 10,000 years ago and also have the Sky Fox bloodline. What was even more surprising was that the idea in the game could be used in reality. Thinking back to Zhong Weiron's figure, Zhong-Shou's brows furrowed. Luckily, so in my heart I unknowingly left such a huge flaw. As expected, to perfect the heart realm, I need to understand myself. Within his brain, there was still a piercing pain. Zhong-Shou directly raised up the illusionary heart mirror. Since the Sky Fox Shui family refined this artifact in the cloud world, they only treated it as a killing artifact. However, in the eyes of the spirit master in the future, that wasn't the case. The many uses that were developed were enough to make the Shui family beat their chests and stomp their feet. Only to see the mirror light flash, and within Zhong-Shou's mind, an illusion appeared once more. It was a green wilderness, filled with the sounds of birds and the fragrance of flowers. Zhong-Shou's expression slowly changed. All the beautiful things in the world were slowly being displayed in front of his eyes. This was soul nurturing. Through some peaceful and beautiful illusionary mirrors that made one feel relaxed and happy, it caused one to forget the pain and allow the soul to slowly heal. In the future, there would be a widely spread theory among spirit masters. To spirit masters, spiritual artifacts and magical treasures weren't based on the grade or material, but whether or not it was suitable for use, and whether or not one could use it to its full potential. Even the lowest grade spiritual artifact, if one could use it well and dig deep to use its ability, it would be of great help. In Zhong-Shou's eyes, the value of this illusionary heart mirror could be compared to magical treasures. He heard that this item was crafted from a treasure passed down in the Sky Fox Shui family. Who knows what the effects of the original version of this item were like? Thinking about it, the pain within Zhong-Shou's soul slowly calmed down. Originally, it would take at least half a month to heal, but now, in just 2 hours, there were signs of recovery. Zhong-Shou wanted to continue working hard, but someone knocked on the door of the cultivation room. Chu Shui's voice spread in from outside. "Young master, are you free now?" Someone from the quiet cloud pavilion came. That Miss Yunlan said that she is the disciple of some Qingyin school and wants to meet young master. Chapter 270. Hanyan Palace, within a side hall. 2 green-shirted women were standing within this empty hall. Originally, there were 2 rows of seats in this hall. However, when the 2 of them entered, The guards here took away all the seats in front of their faces, which was why they could only stand there and wait. Then, from morning till noon, they still didn't see the prince. Xian Yunlan was helpless and could only look up at the sky. The one beside her was that Mother Zhang from that day. Her full name was Zhang Exin. In quiet cloud elegant, she was the procuress. However, she herself was a martial ancestor realm expert, and her position in the outer sect of Qinyin school wasn't weak. At this moment she gritted her teeth in hatred. This Gantian mountain city lord is so arrogant. Although our Qinyin school doesn't occupy the shrines and spiritual houses, it isn't that we don't have the strength to. After reporting his name, he actually dared to treat us so badly. However, when she said that, her face was still filled with hesitation. Junior sister, are you sure that the kid that day is the new Gantian mountain city lord? The ruler of a country, the overlord of Donglin West Continent. How can he only bring 2 Xiantian realm brats to our quiet cloud elegant building? It shouldn't be wrong. Xian Yunlan swept the empty hall without a single seat, smiling bitterly. Their ages are similar, as the rumors say. He has no true qi and spiritual energy. As for the 2 maidservants beside him, have you heard of Ruoshui? This girl has both the Shadow Fox and Sky Fox bloodlines and is best at hiding her cultivation. If she wants to hide, others won't be able to tell. As for why this person would come to quiet cloud elegant building, how would I know? Or maybe he has the ability to kill Xuanwu ancestors and isn't afraid of being assassinated. Just him? Impossible. Zhang Xian directly curled her lips. Thinking about that teen who couldn't even dodge a pail of water, she couldn't help but shake her head in disdain. Following which worry appeared on her face. Junior sister, if it is really him, then it is really problematic. Xian Yunlan was also helpless. If it was other powers it was okay, but this was Gantian Mountain City. In the mortal world, it was huge. In Donglin Cloud Continent, it was enough to suppress Qinyin School. If they did not send out a Tier 7 powerhouse, there was nothing they could do. Even if it was above the Ascended Realm, Gantian Mountain City didn't need to care. Over the years, the demon clan had produced fewer demi-immortals than the human clan, but they were more united. Due to the power of the various sects, they did not interfere with the affairs of the mortal world. However, once a demi-immortal powerhouse attacked the monster clan, the monster clan's forces would be destroyed. He would definitely seek revenge at all costs. Matters that involved the survival of a clan were extremely sensitive. As for Tsang Xingdao, he was viewed as a devil sect member. Even the righteous sects did not welcome him. Furthermore, the reason that the Gantian Mountain City Lord took out could not be more legitimate. It was an open and above-board affair. There was simply no excuse that could be used. Silently sighing, Xian Yunlan wanted to return and not take this dirty air. However, when he thought about those girls outside the quiet cloud pavilion, he felt a headache. Even if he went back, he wouldn't be able to have peace. The incessant curses were like the cries of hundreds of thousands of sparrows, causing one to be unable to calm down. She couldn't help but scold in her heart that the new ruler of Gantian Mountain City was too petty. Zhang Xian's face was also dark and sunken. The expression in his eyes changed. His eyes flickered with ruthlessness and helplessness. He just splashed a bucket of water and didn't do it on purpose. Was there a need to make such a scene? Thinking back to what the edict said, evil and filthy, announcing it in front of everyone, extremely filthy. She couldn't help but feel a stuffy feeling in her chest. The elegant reputation that she spent so many years to build up in Gantian Mountain City was totally destroyed this time. If this city lord was the one from that night, then it was okay. If not, she would definitely skin that Hu Zhongyuan alive. Just as she was thinking about that, her ears moved slightly as she heard some movement. Moments later, she saw a teen strutting in, bringing along a petite maid as he walked into the hall. Then, a few more guards brought over a golden chair and placed it on top of the table. Zhang Xian's eyes instantly constricted, flames of rage flashing in her eyes. It is actually you. Her heart was slightly shocked. For some reason, the feeling that this prince gave her was totally different from that night. There was an indescribable aura. Zhong Shou smiled and sat down on the golden chair in an arrogant manner. This chair was actually really uncomfortable and could only be used to show off. However, Zhong Shou gladly accepted it. Like he didn't hear Zhang Xian's words, slowly making a hand gesture towards Chu Shui, letting the latter speak for him. Young master said that you are from Qinin's sect. Why are you looking for me? Long story short, I am busy with many things and don't have much time to bother with you. Zhang Xian's forehead instantly swelled up, her chest nearly exploding from rage. Xian Yunlan smiled slightly, elegantly bowing. Qinin sect Xian Yunlan greets the ruler. The two of us came to apologize and also for Shirley Ling Xiangding. This place is filled with desolate girls with no way out. Yunlan begs the ruler to take back your orders. Apologize? Why do you need to apologize? You didn't offend me. Zhong Shou was stunned, his face filled with confusion. Then, it turned into rage, heavily hammering the armrest. Following which he made a few hand gestures. Chu Shui furiously translated. Sealing and investigating Shirley Ling Xiangding is a huge policy of Argantian Mountain City and won't be easily changed. Those girls are pitiful, but if the culture of Argantian Mountain City changes because of this, in the future our country will be wiped out. Who will pity Argantian Mountain City races? Does your Qinin sect want to interfere in Argantian Mountain City politics? Before this he was still calm, but suddenly he was furious. It caused the two girls in the hall to hold their breaths, speechless. Chu Shui, who was at the side, laughed silently. Her young master was putting on an act again. Xian Yunlan was helpless, her face smiling brightly. Her already alluring face and figure seemed even more soul-stirring at this moment. What happened that night was my Quiet Cloud Pavilion's fault. The ruler is a magnanimous person and won't pursue this matter. Ruler, please give Yunlan face and let Shirley Ling Xiangding go, how about it? His eyes seemed to be emitting light. They were so dazzling that they caused one's heart to waver. Chu Shui took a look and was startled. Just as she was about to agree, she heard a burst of laughter. This time he didn't need Chu Shui to speak, directly using spiritual energy to form words. Give you face? Who are you, for me to give you face? Just based on your ability to sell your smile, it isn't enough. Those words seemed to contain a weird power. Like a giant hammer being thrown down from the void, smashing into the depths of Chu Shui's soul. It caused her to instantly wake up, following which the illusion disappeared. The scene in front of her eyes returned to how it was before. As for Xian Yunlan, she took a step back, her face flushing red and then ashen white. Her heart was filled with embarrassment and guilt. This was the first time she used the demon charming technique of the Qinin sect. The first target was a teen who was only 14 years old. At this moment, she was more shocked. Not only was this young demon king not affected by her cultivation technique, he even managed to break through the few words that were condensed in the void. Those words were like sharp swords stabbing into her heart. She was stunned. Why was this Zhong Shou able to gather spiritual energy and form words in the air? Following which only Zhong Shou stood up and walked over step by step. You actually dare to use the evil seduction technique on this king? How dare you? He waved his sleeves slightly behind him, and a few guards understood. They carried 2 wooden basins from outside the hall and walked in. Zhang Xian took a look, only to see that it was filled with clear water. She was first shocked, following which she came back to her senses. Her eyes opened wide in rage. You dare! Kid, you need to know that within 3 steps, blood can be spilled. Her right hand holding the sword, a sword aura instantly rose up. There were no other experts here. In just 3 breaths, she would be able to suppress this damn teen. Even if this kid seemed to have a mysterious ability. However, in the next instance, a power that was 10 times, 100 times stronger than the true chi in her body suddenly suppressed her. The sword aura that she formed was forcefully smashed. Her hand held the sword hilt, but she was unable to pull it out. Her body was also bearing millions of kilograms of pressure. Her legs were instantly pressed 2 inches into the ground. His bones were making cracking sounds all over his body. This strength far exceeds the peak of the Xuanwu realm. Is it the ascended realm? Zhang Xian instinctively thought that there was an ascended realm expert nearby. A moment later, she felt that it wasn't right. She tried to discern the source of the pressure, following which her eyes lost focus. Under the pressure of the huge power, her eyes were filled with red dots, unable to see anything. She could only feel that there was a sword intent opposite her. A sword intent that was 100 times stronger than hers was stopping in front of her eyes. As long as it was pushed forwards, it would be able to wipe out her soul and body. In that direction, there was only one person, Zhong Shou. Xian Yunlan couldn't move, her breathing became heavy. With her peak martial ancestor cultivation, her situation was only slightly better than Zhang Xian's. Sword intent wrapped around, gathering the strength of a country. This was the King Path secret technique. Half of the rumors that spread in the world were actually true. This young monster king's sword intent was connected to the spirit. All of a sudden, she didn't know how to react. She was actually so bold to use the demon charm technique in front of such an expert. I am not a person who goes overboard. Today, I will give you a taste of your own medicine. Zhong Shou's expression was cold, smiling without any warmth. He casually took a wooden basin and poured it over Zhang Xian's head. Following which, another wooden basin directly poured it over Xian Yunlan's head. The water flowed down until the woman was completely drenched. Only then did he casually toss the wooden basin aside, patting his hands and returning to the golden chair to sit down. While retracting that aura, a warm smile returned to his face, like what happened just now didn't happen. Zhang Xian just regained her ability to move, pulling out her sword with a schwa sound. She gritted her teeth, blood nearly seeping out from the corner of her lips. However, when she looked at Zhong Shou, his eyes still filled with cold intent, her heart jumped. Like a bucket of ice water was poured over her, all thoughts of revenge swiftly disappearing. She knew that in this place, this new Gantian mountain monster king only needed a finger to kill them. Xian Yunlan was also so furious that her petite body trembled, her face turning green. Ruler humiliated us today, aren't you afraid of our Qinin sect taking revenge? When Zhong Shou heard that, he smiled, the sharpness in his eyes like he could see through everything. It is just a battle, what do I have to fear? Chapter 271. When Zhong Shou heard that, he smiled, the sharpness in his eyes seemed to be able to see through everything. It is just a battle, what do I have to fear? Xian Yunlan's breathing stopped once more. She noticed that what Zhong Shou said wasn't that the conflict today was all because of Qinin school, or that he mentioned the power behind him. He directly said that it was just a battle. What did he have to fear? He didn't explain, didn't avoid, didn't beat around the bush. Just a short cross, but it was filled with spirit. No fear, no fear. Fighting spirit charging into the heavens. Inwardly shocked, Xian Yunlan completely put away her other thoughts. Although she was bullied today, but every step that Zhong Shou took was logical. Even if she was splashed with a bucket of water by this monster king, it was because she was the first to use the demon charm technique. Although it was revenge, the methods of the person opposite her could be said to be brilliant. Even someone as strong as Qinin school and Song Xingdao couldn't find anything wrong with him. She could only bear with her anger and bite her lips. Looking at the teasing expression in the teen's eyes, Xian Yunlan's chest was so depressed that she was about to spit out blood. He really wanted to go all out and fight to the death with Zhong Shou. In the end, the heart state that she cultivated in the brothel slowly came into effect. Rationality slowly took over. Xian Yunlan bowed once more, her voice becoming soft. Ruler is joking. Although Qinyin school is seen as a demon sect, they aren't unreasonable. How can they be enemies with Gantian Mountain City because of such a small matter? However, now that ruler has vented your anger, can that Shirley Ling Xiangding ban be removed? Zhong Shou was delighted when he heard that, retracting his fighting spirit, shaking his head slightly. That ban is a huge policy of our Gantian Mountain City and concerns the big picture. What does it have to do with the grievances between us? Those girls are considered people of Gantian Mountain City. I have my ways of dealing with them. It isn't something that you can care about. If you came for this matter, then stop talking and waste my time. At this moment, not only was Zhang Xian furious, but even Xian Yunlan's face was twitching. So this time, they had come for nothing? They suffered such humiliation, but in the end, they couldn't even get a single promise from him. Zhong Shou originally wanted to just wave his sleeves and leave. He had plans for the Shirley Ling Xiangding matter. Naturally, he would leave a way out for those brothel girls and didn't need her to say anything. However, just as he stood up, he had an idea. Thinking back to the zither music he heard. Xian Yunlan, Qinyin School's zither skills. You guys know the soul-calming spiritual tune to calm your souls to twos? Xian Yunlan was startled, slightly nodding her head. She didn't know why Zhong Shou suddenly mentioned this matter. In the next moment, Zhong Shou laughed out. So you are a direct disciple of the Qinyin school. Sorry for the disrespect. How about this? If you really want to save those pitiful people in Shirley Ling Xiangding, then play this tune for me for 2 hours every day for 3 months. What does Miss Yunlan think? Xian Yunlan was at a loss. Thinking about it for a moment, she nodded her head. The soul-calming spiritual tune was the secret technique of Qinyin school. Each time she played it, she would consume a portion of her soul power. However, if she could perfectly solve this matter, then she wouldn't care. Song Xingdao disciples were mostly born in a pitiful state. Their way of doing things was also a little stubborn. Only Qinyin school was different. Due to their cultivation method, they did things peacefully. Xian Yunlan pitied the girls of Shirley Ling Xiangding because of her background. If she could let these people have a way out, she was willing to pay any price and do anything. Zhong Shou shook his head. Looking at the girl's expression, he suddenly felt ashamed. Did this girl really think she was the reincarnation of a saint? She didn't even bargain and just agreed. Moreover, he could see that Xian Yunlan was sincere. Compared to this girl, he was pretty much a scum. He felt ashamed of his own inferiority. Towards such people who thought they were pure and innocent, kind and compassionate, he hated them the most in his last life. It wasn't that he didn't like them, but that he felt that they were piercing. Like a living being that lived in the darkest shadows, instinctively afraid of sunlight. Laughing with unknown meaning, Zhong Shou didn't say anything more, using his finger to beckon Xian Yunlan before walking out of the side hall. He still returned to the dojo. However, after Zhong Shou entered, he directly closed the doors. Shutting Xian Yunlan outside meant that he wanted her to play the zither outside. Within the Hanyan Palace, there were many musical instruments. Not long later, Chu Shui found a decent quality zither and placed it in front of Xian Yunlan. Then, she giggled as she sat at the side and watched. Xian Yunlan was furious. Her heart was extremely bitter. How did she offend this demon? She took in tens of deep breaths before suppressing her emotions. Her hands pressed down on the zither and the first note was played out. It was crisp and touching, following which a series of notes flowed like a stream, naturally flowing into the hearts of the people around. Chu Shui originally had thoughts of monitoring, but as the zither music continued, her eyes slowly went into a daze. She felt that in this world, there wasn't a sound as beautiful as this. Even the soul power ocean that hadn't moved in a long time was slowly expanding. This soul-calming spiritual tune actually had the effect of helping one cultivate soul power. However, the zither music didn't last for long. In that incomparably spacious martial arts training room, a cold sneer could be heard. Another line of people gathered in the air outside of the doors, unpleasant to hear, impulsive. Is this the secret technique you have passed down? If it only has this little ability to mesmerize the mind, then it is really disappointing. Xian Yunlan was slightly startled. Her finger technique messed up and a thread of blood appeared on her fingertips from the zither strings. Following which she looked towards the direction of the door in shock and rage. She could allow this Zhong Shou to humiliate her, using the lives of close to 10,000 girls in Shirley Ling's Xiangding to threaten her. However, she definitely wouldn't allow him to humiliate her sect. Just as she was about to retort, she heard that Zhong Shou formed a few more lines of words. I heard that the most important part of your soul-calming spiritual tune is the word silence. If your heart isn't calm, how can you play a truly nice zither music? You stayed in the quiet cloud pavilion to experience the affairs of the world and bathe in the mortal world. The Confucians have a good saying that when the heavens give a person a huge responsibility, they must first torture their heart, work their muscles and bones, starve their skin, empty their body, and mess up their actions. Hence, they must bear with it and do what they can. What you have experienced today, who knows if it isn't a test from the heavens? If you can't even take this bit of anger, then why are you still training in martial arts and cultivating the path? At the start, Xian Yunlan was laughing coldly. She only agreed to play the soul-calming spiritual tune for 2 hours. As for the effects of her zither music, she didn't guarantee it. What obligation did she have to make her heart calm? The last few sentences were like a huge bell, so loud that even the deaf could hear it. It shook her soul such that huge waves rose up, her emotions unable to calm down for a long time. In her heart, she suddenly had an enlightened feeling. That's right, with her identity as a zither player, she came to this quiet cloud pavilion to experience everything in the world. To see the changes in the mortal world, the human heart. Then, what she experienced today wasn't a test for her heart realm, a training. Thinking about it carefully, this young monarch was actually no different from the guests who came and went in the quiet cloud pavilion in the past. Every day, weren't there people who were unhappy with her and wanted to make things difficult for her? There were even people with bad intentions. Then, why did she have to care so much? Thinking about it like that, Xian Yunlan's heart instantly calmed down. In an instant, she seemed to have comprehended a lot. Not only was she not angry, but a smile appeared at the corner of her lips. Her 10 fingers danced on the zither, a melody jumped out once more. As expected, it was totally different from before. The soul power that should have been consumed wasn't consumed, instead, it increased slightly. Within her mind, there seemed to be many floating dust that was swept out, making it crystal clear. At this moment, Zhong Shou was behind the door. His mouth was wide open, unable to close. His nonsense was only meant to deceive the other party into playing the soul-calming spiritual tune for him willingly. This dumb woman actually believed him. Not only did she believe him, but she also started to seriously play the zither. Her soul realm seemed to have improved a lot because of his word. All of a sudden, Zhong Shou didn't know whether he should regret or feel lucky. Anyways, this Xian Yunlan was indeed a rare weirdo. Squinting his eyes, Zhong Shou was too lazy to bother. That illusionary heart mirror still floated in front of him. His mind once again entered a state of meditation. This soul-calming spiritual tune of Qinyin sect was really amazing. In terms of healing soul injuries, it was not inferior to some rare spirit pills. The faint pain in his head had already completely disappeared. After Zhong Shou observed his soul ocean, he didn't bother anymore. Following which, he raised up the illusionary heart mirror. However, this time it wasn't to let his soul enter a peaceful illusionary realm. Instead, it was a battlefield filled with killing intent, filled with corpses and bones. The first person that appeared in front of him was a strong enemy that he had met in his last life. The illusionary heart mirror was a grade 7 spiritual artifact, which was why it could only simulate grade 7 experts, ascended ancestors and day-wandering spirit masters. Zhong Shou set his cultivation as the night-wandering realm of spirit masters. However, he didn't have any true qi at all. Within the illusionary heart mirror, sword energy charged into the heavens and spiritual energy surged. What Zhong Shou was using now were spiritual technique. At most, he would use the One Origin sword to help him to deal with the attacks of this day-wandering spirit master to not let himself die too early. Although his martial path was strong, his greatest achievement in this life was in soul power. However, he had no experience in spiritual techniques at all, using illusionary realms to think about fighting methods. Although it didn't have the time acceleration effect of the illusionary mirror in his last life. However, it was the quickest way to make up for this weakness. Directly choosing the day-wandering spirit master as his opponent was because Zhong Shou believed that only under the pressure of a strong enemy could he grow faster. Chapter 272. Using the illusionary heart mirror to simulate, at the start, even with the help of the One Energy sword, Zhong Shou was defeated in just a breath. However, Zhong Shou wasn't afraid of being killed. Originally, in the illusionary realm, his soul would be affected. However, at this moment, there was a silly girl playing the soul-calming spiritual tune outside of the room, so he didn't have to worry anymore. He just needed to go all out to use spells and talismans to block the suppression of this day-wandering spirit master. In this illusionary realm, everything was formed based on the memories in Zhong Shou's mind. In his last life, he had been through hundreds of battles and was knowledgeable. He knew the methods of spirit masters like the back of his hand. The day-wandering spirit master simulated by the illusionary heart mirror was 80 to 90% real. He truly had the ability to move mountains and rivers. His methods were also unpredictable and not inflexible at all. He pretty much didn't use the same method twice to counter the enemy. Thousands of spells that Zhong Shou knew were at his fingertips. From start to finish, he was torturing and killing Zhong Shou. Actually, if it was martial path, even if he was only at Earth Chakra 2 Meridian Sciention cultivation, Zhong Shou was confident that he could use his martial path intent to last above 4 breath. However, this illusionary realm was formed to train the fighting techniques of spirit masters. The methods that Zhong Shou could use were limited to spirit masters. This caused him to not know what to do, not knowing what methods he should use to block it. An hour later, after hundreds of clashes, Zhong Shou was finally able to block and break a spell. Following which, he was instantly destroyed by the spiritual energy that covered the entire area. However, the spells that he broke started to slowly increase. 2, 3, 4. Until he occasionally entered the second breath period. Maybe because he was fighting under such high pressure, the spell fighting method that he slowly formed was a little different. Either he used his talisman path attainments to break the spell before it was formed, or he thought of a way to counter the spell. They were all extremely dangerous, using the weak to fight the strong. In the beginning, Zhong Shou was still calculating the time, but after only a quarter of an hour, he could not help but completely forget everything. He completely forgot himself and only knew how to analyze and summarize. After a long time, Zhong Shou gradually regained consciousness. Then, he was shocked to realize that he was able to frequently enter the 6th breath under the frenzied attacks of the day-wandering spirit master. When he attacked, there seemed to be a kind of rhythm. It was incomparably compact and pleasing to the eye. Spells after spells were cast out from his hands. Not only were they much faster, but his understanding of talismans was also much better than before. That seemed to be an epiphany just now. When he thought about it carefully, it seemed to be the case. However, when he was fully focused on the battle, he did indeed feel an endless surge of inspiration. His thoughts were also several times faster than before. In this state, no matter what he learned, it would be incomparably fast. But if it wasn't an epiphany, then what was the reason? Could it be because of the illusionary heart mirror? Speaking of which, he used this mirror and used some tricks. It was an illusionary technique developed in the future that spirit masters used to target their own bodies. Through self-hypnosis, one's mind would be clear and one's thoughts would be clearer. This was also the most shallow use. Roughly 5,000 years later, there was a pervert. He continuously hypnotized himself to think that he was the one and only God spirit in the world. In the end, this person actually became unbelievably strong. Not only did he create a sect, but he also stepped into the saint realm and was amazing for a period of time. Zhong Shou didn't have such ability and also didn't have such close to perverted confidence. The bad thing about this method was that once one's confidence was broken and the hypnosis was broken, one's cultivation would be reduced by 90%. In the end, the sect leader who created the mind hypnosis technique fell just like that. Zhong Shou wasn't willing to follow in his footsteps and end up in a tragedy. He only used some harmless and effective methods that were proven in the future. Through the illusionary heart mirror, the effects were a little stronger. However, even then, he wouldn't enter a state similar to an epiphany. Suddenly, a zither sound rang out in his ears. Zhong Shou instantly opened his eyes like he understood something and looked towards the gate. He pretty much understood the reason. The illusionary heart mirror hypnosis was one reason, but Xian Yunlan's soul-calming spiritual tune also had a huge effect. Moreover, this zither sound was already incomparable to when it started. A large-scale cleansing and sublimation, each note was just right. It wasn't fast nor slow, not light nor heavy. Just this zither sound alone was enough to cause one to have no distracting thoughts, wanting to immerse one's mind in the zither sound forever. This was the true soul-calming spiritual tune. Legends had it that when one was at their peak, one could tame grade 9 beasts. Using his spiritual sense to slightly sense, he could feel that Xian Yunlan was fully focused. Her eyes were closed, her lips were smiling, like being able to play this tune was really comfortable for her. Nearby, Chu Shui had already fallen asleep. As for the rest of the guards, they were all stupefied and incomparably quiet. Looking at the sunlight shining in from the window, it was already noon. It had obviously exceeded the 2 hours that they agreed on. Zhong Shou's mouth was agape, thinking to himself that this was called luck. So the one who was enlightened wasn't him but this dumb-looking woman. His words seemed to have totally awakened Xian Yunlan, causing her to break through some kind of barrier. However, the heavens took pity on him. At that time, he really didn't think too much, only thinking that it was best if he could trick her. If he couldn't, then it didn't matter. Sighing for a moment, Zhong Shou tossed aside all distracting thoughts. Without hesitation, he lit up a few red sandalwood incense sticks and placed them in front of him. After that, he carefully took out a luck talisman and stuck it on his forehead. This chance was hard to come by. Even if he would suffer from bad luck in the next few hours, he would accept it. He raised the illusionary heart mirror up in the air and shone it above his head. His spiritual sense instantly entered a state of meditation. In his mind there was only one purify word. He split it into tens of true talismans and thousands of spiritual patterns, continuously breaking it down, continuously fixing it, and continuously combining it back together. Over and over again, he constructed the word purify in his mind. Over and over again, he pushed it aside without leaving any traces, until this word was compatible with the path of heaven and earth, resonating with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Who knows when, but little gold on Zhong Shou's left arm actually gave out threads of heat. In front of Zhong Shou, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth started to gather on its own. Over and over again, it was the purify word. They were all similar, but each change caused the 10,000 feet of heaven and earth spiritual energy to become a little purer. All the dust in the 1,000 feet wide cultivation room was pushed to the corner by an external force. It caused the ground that Zhong Shou was sitting on to be unusually clean. These talismans were also used on Zhong Shou's soul and body. If at this moment Zhong Shou could look into his body, he would be able to sense that the true qi in his body was extremely pure. Within his soul ocean whirlpool, it was so clear that it was close to being transparent. Once he comprehended, Zhong Shou totally forgot about the time. Until the talisman in his mind repeated several times, but it didn't make any progress. Zhong Shou's spiritual sense woke up once more. He knew that even if he continued, he wouldn't be able to make any progress. This was due to the accumulation of talisman knowledge and lack of knowledge. This is a true enlightenment. Within Samuraim's mind, threads of purple light flashed, revealing a surprised expression. I have already completed 60% of this true talisman. In the future, even if I slowly deduce it, I will only need half a year to fully comprehend it. If I can find records of this talisman to verify it, the time can be even shorter. After a spirit master's cultivation passed the stage where they improved by leaps and bounds at the start. Even some geniuses wouldn't be able to improve in 4 to 5 years. To be able to enter the next realm in half a year, Zhong Shou was already really satisfied. This speed wasn't any weaker than those direct bloodline geniuses who had the help of sect resources. At this moment, his brain was still unusually active. Under the stimulation of the zither music and illusionary heart mirror, his inspiration continued to rise. Just as he wanted to continue to work hard and comprehend a little more on the King Path martial arts, his brows suddenly rose. His brows furrowed as he looked into the distance through the gate. Due to the zither music and illusionary heart mirror, Zhong Shoxin's spiritual sense was also unusually sensitive. In that instance, he suddenly captured an intent filled with evil intent stabbing over from the distance. This is an ascended ancestor. Pretty much instantly, Zhong Shou recognized the strength of this intent as well as the killing intent within. His thoughts spun, and moments later, he roughly guessed where this person came from. Demon Mountain Sect? Zhong Shou sighed. This was really problematic. In this Gantian mountain city, in his own territory, he didn't fear ascended ancestors. Hu Qianxiu, who was an 8-meridian Xuanwu expert who was good at the martial path, as long as he was prepared and borrowed the strength of 400,000 troops, he could go up against ascended experts. If he could advance a grade, then 100,000 troops would be enough. That day, Qiu Wei and Hu Qianxiu had far fewer experts than Zhong Shi, a difference of several times. However, they were able to have an advantage in the city because of this. As for himself, he could also borrow the strength of a country. Although his cultivation was only at the Xiantian second meridian and there weren't many things that he could use, with his martial path cultivation, it wasn't a problem for him to keep his life in a head-on battle. However, the strength of an ascended ancestor was in his own body. If he wanted to be enemies with Gantian Mountain, he wouldn't be able to do much to him. Within these 2 to 3 years, he wouldn't be able to leave Gantian Mountain City. Moreover, this person was so careful, like he was waiting for something. He also vaguely felt that an even greater danger was quietly approaching. Apart from this person, there were probably other experts. Who knows, there might even be a grade 8 Grandmaster. A sharp glow flashed in Zhong Shou's eyes. His heart was ice cold. However, even then, he didn't regret what he did in the Blood Valley Demon Corpse Mountain. Even if he knew that he would be taken revenge, that he would fall into a situation where he couldn't recover. That day, he would still attack without hesitation. Living in this world, there were things that one should do and things that one shouldn't do. At that time, if he still had to look on from the side, then what was the point of him living? Grandmaster Expert. If he couldn't win, he would just die. Chapter 273. With a thought, he summoned the One Origin sword and let it float in front of him. Zhong Shou once again started to think back to those secret books that recorded the Emperor martial path that he had seen in his last life. The 4 moves that Zhong Weiran seemed to have created weren't complete. Power also wasn't that strong. Previously, it was only because it was compatible with the indefinite spirit Emperor art, so it could be used immediately. Only then did he change the fist technique to a sword technique. Actually, there were many flaws. Xue Moyan and Wuya weren't at the peak realm. Even if they saw the flaws, they weren't able to use them, which was why he was able to crush them and kill them. As for Zhongzheng, it was because he caught him off guard. If they were to fight again, this person would be able to see through him, and at least he would be able to retreat. Even if he used King Path martial arts, in terms of strength he could beat Zhongzheng, it was the same. This is the book, Emperor Wind. Lines of words flowed in Yu Yu's mind. The Emperor Path cultivation method he chose only had 2 simple words: Emperor Wind. There weren't many Emperor Path secret techniques in the cloud world. In the central continent there were tens of dynasties along with the 5 continents and 12 islands. There were only hundreds of kingdoms that had the ability to use King Path martial arts. Those that were perfectly preserved were even fewer. However, along with those from other worlds there was an ocean amount. As for the book that Zhong Shou chose, power wasn't strong, and his cultivation speed was only average. The only good thing about it was that it was calm and peaceful, and it had the least amount of true qi and soul corruption. After making his decision, Zhong Shou didn't hesitate anymore, using the power of the zither music to enter that mysterious state. The thoughts in his mind were running at close to 10 times the usual speed. The One Origin sword in front of him was also changing bit by bit. Using the sword to replace the body, cultivating the King Path. There were many parts of this cultivation method that needed to be reconsidered. However, at this moment, Zhong Shou didn't ask for it to be perfect and flawless, without any flaws. As long as it was within a certain amount of time, it would be effective. This set of Emperor Wind was split into 13 layers. It should be the imperial martial Tao of a great empire in another world. Just the first 9 levels could correspond to the 9 levels below the immortal Tao. Zhong Shou's One Origin sword had a foundation, which was equivalent to the night wandering realm. The first and second levels were cultivated almost instantly. Only when he reached the 4th and 5th levels did he encounter some obstacles. 2 hours later, he was still successful. At this moment, there seemed to be a word condensing on the sword. Upon closer inspection, one could vaguely make out the word Wang. As soon as the character was formed, a huge pressure shrouded the entire cultivation room, covering an area of a few hundred zhang. At first, he was unable to control it. It was like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, crushing everything in its path. The stone ground was crushed into pieces. Even the roof beams were shattered into pieces, causing dust to fall from the roof. When he reached the 6th floor, Zhong Shou stopped decisively. The Emperor martial Tao was different from mortal martial arts. Cultivation did not depend on one's aptitude, but on the power of the nation. If the cultivator was proficient in the force of martial Tao and had a strong national power, the national power would be at its peak. Then within 2 to 3 months, it was possible to cultivate to the peak of the 13th layer. A teen inheriting the throne could instantly become an emperor who had the ability to slaughter peak martial cultivators. In some big countries, 3 to 5-year-old kids who inherited the throne could grasp shocking strength under the effects of their bloodline. They didn't even need to cultivate. With the king energy gathered in Gantian Mountain City, Zhongsho had the confidence to directly step into the 7th layer within a month. Even if he had a few months, charging into the 8th layer was not a dream, which meant that in a month, he would be able to go up against that grade 7 Ascended Ancestor Day Wandering Spirit Master. Of course, he could only show off his strength in this small Gantian mountain city. The strength of a country, the King Path energy was only thickest in the capital city or in places with dense spiritual veins. The further one was from the capital city, the thinner it would be. Which was why the capital city of a country was a place where the dragon veins gathered. As long as one was the emperor, he wouldn't easily leave the capital and wouldn't go out of the country. The moment he left, no matter how strong he would be limited, like a dragon trapped in a shallow pond. After cultivating the 7th layer of this emperor wind, Zhongsho had the confidence to avoid this calamity. However, he wasn't in a rush now. He just needed to complete it before that ascended ancestor or even grandmaster came to find trouble with him. The most important thing now was to build a firm dam to block the corrosion of the King Path energy. His brows locked tightly, Zhongsho thought seriously for a moment. Within the body of the One Origin Sword, he started to build runes once more. The first was lightning, hoping to use the power of lightning to lock it down. The second one was the incomplete purification, when a few true spiritual charms were just imprinted on it. Zhongsho felt an unusually strong power instantly crushing it. It was the strength of the country and also the king energy. Normal true spiritual talismans didn't have the ability to restrict it. Who knows, maybe tomorrow her cultivation would be able to break through to the peak of the Return to Sun realm. At this moment she was slightly shocked. After thinking about it, she felt that the energy in her body was a little unstable. Her eyes were filled with respect as she bowed deeply towards Zhongsho. Yunlan thanks Ruler for your help. I am really grateful for your guidance today. If Ruler didn't wake me up in time, I would have gone down the wrong path. Zhongsho blinked. It was tough to say that he used water to wake Yunlan up out of jealousy. He waved his hand in a carefree manner, laughing involuntarily as he was about to walk out of the door. A sense of danger rose up in his heart at that moment. Then, in the next moment, a boom sound was heard. The martial arts training room collapsed with a loud bang. Zhongsho was unable to dodge at all. His head was first heavily smashed by the bricks, and then dust covered the sky. When the dust scattered all about, Zhongsho's body was covered in a gray-yellow color. Only 2 eyes were left on his face as he looked at the sky speechlessly. He wondered if the heavens could make him even more unlucky. Yunlan in the distance had her mouth agape, thinking to herself that with Zhongsho's strength, he should have easily dodged it. Chuxue, on the other hand, woke up with sleepy eyes. She looked around in a daze and yawned. This time, the entire house collapsed? Young master, you used that luck talisman again? At midnight, a teen dressed in a green scholarly shirt stepped into Gantian Mountain City. Although the city gates were closed, it was unable to block the body of the teen. He directly treated it as an object, stepping onto the 500-foot city. Just as he reached the city walls, he saw Zhao Yanran waiting solemnly at the side. Seeing the teen arrive, she immediately bowed. Yanran greets the revered one. At this moment, if Zhongsho or Lei Dong was here, they would definitely be shocked. She must have been shocked. Zhao Yanran, who was usually frivolous and unrestrained, was actually acting like a lady from a big family. Her words and actions were all gentle and polite. The teen smiled, casually waving his hand and helping her up. You are Zhao Yanran? I know the personality of your 7 Spirit Sect disciples. Be more casual, there is no need to be restrained. Although there were groups of soldiers patrolling, they were unable to notice the 2 of them who were talking. The teen looked at the entire Gantian mountain city, his brows furrowing. How quiet! Is there a night curfew in this Gantian mountain city? Zhao Yanran immediately nodded. 2 days after Zhong Shou ascended to the throne, there was a night curfew. There were also a few government decrees, like all the brothels in the city were all closed down. However, Zhao Yanran doesn't know about country matters and doesn't know whether it is good or bad. After the teen heard that, he shook his head slightly.